Testing. Okay, good morning, everyone. If I can ask everybody to take their seats, please. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 14 on today's agenda. For the items listed above, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board if Council does not adopt an amendment within 120 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 180 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door for anyone wishing to submit written comments on these amendments, or if you wish to speak to any of the items on our report. So welcome, everyone. It's the first past the gate, if you will, planning meeting. We're back to every 2 weeks. It's the little committee that keeps on giving. And so here we are on August the 25th. Any declarations of interest? None? Confirmation of minutes, and those will be the minutes of July 7th, 2015. Did anyone have any changes, or are they carried? Thank you. Yes?
The minutes that pertain to the CIL report were they're a simple deferral, and there's no indication in the minutes as to what it was being deferred for. And so do we have any comment on, other than the audio that we could try to access, which is on and off at times? Is there understanding as to what it was being deferred for?
Mr. Marks? Any comments on whether we need to add something to the deferral?
So, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, pardon me, for a purely legal perspective, the answer would be no. It is, of course, committee's discretion as to whether or not they wish to insert a reason within the minutes.
Did you want to?
All right, no, because I thought that was part of the deferral motion last time.
So what are you thinking that you would like to add? Because I'm not, I'm looking for just...
Well, there were elements to ensure that the report would contain the payback after bridge financing, and there were elements to re-explore the question of using CILs for life cycle and maintenance, and there were, I think, 1 or 2 other items, and we were supposed to have been brought into this over the summer so we could comment, but I know no one asked me. I don't know if anyone asked you.
Well, we did send out a memo to everybody, and actually we received no comments. And we
sent out a memo with your opinion as to what the final report should have, but staff didn't ask members of committee what they want. Really?
It said right in it to please come back with any comments, questions, or anything in that memo.
That was a memo from you.
No, it was from him.
Okay.
Madam Chair, on that point, I did comment on the policy, and I'm prepared to bring forward a motion with some amendments to the policy today.
Okay.
So what do you want to do with the deferral?
Let's leave the minutes. Let's leave the minutes, and we'll just go and hold item 2.
Okay. Which we were going to anyway. So thank you. So the minutes have been carried. The first item was a postponement and deferral from the 1423 and 1449 Earl Armstrong Road and 4509 and 4515 Line Bank Road. And I've spoken with the Councillor Kakish, and yesterday, and he has no objections to it at all. We do have Anna Frolick from Novatech here. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, we'll hold it then. Okay, and we're holding cash in lieu of parkland policy amendments. Designation of Lipset House, 37 Oriole Drive in Rothwell Heights under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Anybody want to hold that, or is it carried? Carried, thank you. Updates to the City of Ottawa Heritage Register and Kitchissippi Ward. I thought they were excellent examples. Does anyone have any questions? Want to hold that? Yours carried. Oh, Brian Casagrande is here on the next one. Okay. So that one's carried, the register. Zoning bylaw amendment, 895 Eagleson Road and part of 2 Emerald Meadows Drive. We do have Brian Casagrande from FOTEN here on that item. Does anyone have any questions or see any need to not carry it? So, Mr. Casagrande, where are you? So if the committee carries this item, you don't need to speak? Thank you very much. So is it carried? Thank you. Okay, zoning bylaw amendment, 3323, 3341, and 3433 Navin Road, and 6360 Reno Road. We have no speakers. Any questions from committee members? No? Is it carried? Thank you. Okay, we have a zoning bylaw amendment for parts of 90 Woodridge Crescent and part of 100 Bayshore Drive for the temporary parking lot for a 2-year period for Bayshore. Does anyone have any questions on this? We do have a speaker on this. Mr. Clark? There you are. No questions from, if committee is willing to carry this, do you need to speak?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So is it carried? Thank you. Okay, number 8, we have comprehensive zoning bylaw 2008-250 anomaly amendments Q3 2015. Pretty standard report. Does anyone have any questions about this? We don't have any speakers. Is it carried? Thank you. Okay, number 9, front-ending agreement for the 10th line pumping station sanitary overflow. We have no speakers on that, and we don't need to defer it. Pardon?
Madam Chair, yes, we do need to defer.
Okay. Who's here in the, is anyone here in the audience from Mattamy?
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, hi. All right, so Councillor Tierney, are you going to move deferral of the front-ending agreement for the 10th line pumping station sanitary overflow while we check on some of the math here in this report? So that we have a deferral that's moved? Carried? Thank you. Do we need, just before we move on, Ms. Sneddon, do we need to have longer than the next planning committee meeting?
Madam Chair, I believe that will be enough time for Mattamy to confirm their budget.
Okay, that's September the 8th. Great, thank you. The next one will be holding application to alter the City Works Building 7 Bayview Road, a property protected under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Holding that one. Okay, and we'll be also holding item number 11, which is the designation of Champlain Oil Gas Station at 70 Richmond Road under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Item number 12 has been withdrawn, and that was the application to alter 122 Daly Avenue, a property designated in Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located in the Sandy Hill West Heritage Conservation District. So that's been withdrawn. Okay. Number 13 is the application to alter the transportation building, which is the Rideau Centre, at 10 Rideau Street, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Does anyone have any questions? We have no speakers on that one. Does anyone have any questions? So that's carried. Thank you. And lastly, we have the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 11 Colonel By Drive. That's the Weston. And we have the applicant is here to speak. Does anybody on committee have any questions? Are you? No? Ms. Willis, if committee is willing to carry this, are you okay not to speak? Okay, so is this item carried? Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go back to the beginning, which is questions that Councillor Leeper has on the new shopping centre at Limebank and Earl Armstrong. And speaking to that, Cheryl McWilliams, and she's joined by Louise Sweet Lindsay, and by Ms. Sneddon, Leanne Sneddon. Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of very brief questions. The report, I believe, made mention that the proponent was unwilling to remove some of the parking spots in order to meet one of the recommendations of the Urban Design Review Panel. I think it was some of the proposed landscaping that the UDRP had recommended. I'm just curious, how many spots would the proponent have lost had they followed the UDRP recommendation?
I'm sorry, but I really don't know the answer to that. I'm filling in for one of the other planners, so I'm familiar with the zoning aspects, but that was really being looked at in more detail through the site plan control application, which is not yet approved for this site.
Okay. I won't kick back too hard at this, but I think it is important that, whenever the UDRP is making a recommendation, that we're doing everything possible to try to follow it. I was just wondering about the north-east side of the proposed development. Is there any kind of pedestrian access that's been proposed in order to get people from the residential area just across into the development?
Mosquito Creek runs through there, and it's a fairly significant environmental and geotechnical slope issue with that part of Mosquito Creek. So we, at this point, would not be looking at having any sort of pedestrian crossing. It would be a fairly significant bridge facility that would have to be constructed to provide that access.
And that was my third question. So it is intended to be a fairly natural landscape, not manicured at all, just left in as much a natural state as possible.
Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. That was all the questions I had.
Good questions. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? So is this item carried? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you to staff. Okay, so cash in lieu of parkland policy amendments, part 2, from July the 7th. And who's going to be speaking to that? Mr. Curry, are you speaking to that? Let's see. Oh, and Mr. Chenier, Dan, you should come forward. Mr. Mizzi, everybody, Mr. Moser, it's a party. Okay, we're not having a presentation because we had one from the recently departed for Italy, Jake Rupert, at the last meeting. So we're going to go to, now, first of all, who would like to speak to this? Councillor Hubley is first. Councillor Brockington. Councillor Chernachenko. Councillor Shirelli. Anybody else? Do you want to speak to it, Catherine? Yeah. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Hubley first for questions, comments, motion, etc.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My intent is, well, I'll ask these questions, and then I do have a motion I want to bring forward. 3 parts of the report that I'd like staff to address. One is the suggestion that we be able to advance projects on the life cycle list using CIL funds. Currently, not all the projects on the life cycle list get funded. Those are decisions that are made in the budget year depending on what money is available and so on, and the priorities set. Therefore, using the CIL funds to fund future projects is a guarantee, with a guarantee of a full refund, would, in my mind, create a process that would circumvent the normal budget process. So I'd like to hear from staff how they think that this report wouldn't do that. CIL, in my view, should be used as seed money for partnerships with community partners and for additions to projects where funding is secured. So could somebody address that point, how you don't see this as circumventing the process?
Through the chair, I think I'll have the city treasurer respond to that question.
Welcome, Ms. Simlick. I didn't see you come in.
I snuck in the back. So the normal budget process, Councillor, the allocation, the envelope that is allocated for park redevelopment or improvement is set each year, and the projects are identified. You can only do that for basically the term, though. So it doesn't circumvent the budget process because the envelope wouldn't change. All that would happen would be that a project that would be identified as being on the list to be done in 2018, if the councillor was so fortunate as to have enough cash in lieu and parkland in their account, they could say, I'd like to accelerate that and have that done in 2016. So it doesn't circumvent the budget process. What it does is it creates for ISD, who have to basically manage all these projects, they would have whatever the normal budget in that year to do, plus they would add on any that get accelerated by councillors.
So to be clear, you're now saying that projects listed in life cycle for 2018, we can assume that there's money attached to every single project?
When we do the budget, we do a forecast for future years, and that forecast reflects what we have available and what we will be proposing to have available in each of those years. So it's a balanced budget. It's not speculative in that we put a whole bunch of projects there that we won't be able to fund. We only put projects on that forecast list that we have funding for or know we will have funding for in that time. So the risk is that there could be something could happen, and in fact that could change because all of a sudden we are increasing the annual contribution every year to capital, but there could be a chance that council decides during the budget process that they're not going to make that additional contribution, and then those projects, some of those projects would be at risk. But it's not a wish list, it's a list. We give them a funding envelope and they fill it with projects.
So you don't see a concern with if we do an advance on a project, to use your scenario, use CIL funds this year to advance a project that's listed for 2018, and any of those economic indicators make changes between now and 2018 and we can't fund that project, you don't have a problem coming up with the money to reimburse the CIL, which will just continue to grow and protrude forever?
If the project gets pushed back because of a change in economic indicators, then I would say that the repayment would also be pushed back. So if the project was there in 2018 and you advanced it, and then all of a sudden council decides they're not going to increase the contribution and a project has to drop off, through their priority listing, ISD would say these are the projects we can now afford, and if that project that got advanced now gets pushed into 2019, the repayment would happen in 2019. That's the risk the councillor takes.
Yeah, that seems like an awful big risk. And I would make an assumption here that councillors that don't have a lot of CIL funds would be totally left out of any park renewal projects because all the focus will now go on councillors that have the CIL funds to do this.
Not at all, councillor. ISD does determines what needs to be done on a priority basis, not on who can fund it. So they look at the work that needs to be done, and the highest priority gets done first, regardless of what ward that is in.
Okay, thank you. The committee will make a decision based on that, I'm sure. So my second question is, councillors are usually the lead on sponsorship files. During the last term of council, we really moved towards the sponsorship program, which I think comes out of Mr. Chenier's area, and councillors have embraced this way to do community improvements, to go out and find partners within the communities, local businesses, people like the community associations that want to do improvements in their communities. Typically, that involves on major projects, and I'll say major being more than $10,000, that involves some recognition by the city for people's contributions to those, whether it's a play structure or a splash pad or an arena, whatever it may be. We tend to recognize the ones that are making those contributions. The clause in this report suggests that councillors should not be allowed to be recognized on those plaques or make those plaques available through the CIL funds with the councillor's name on it, only the mayor's name. And I find it very objectionable that you suggested that councillors were using this to promote themselves. It's a community improvement. I think everybody around this table goes into these arrangements with partners to try to improve their community. It's not all about putting a $200,000 splash pad in a community just so one of us can put our name on it. So I'm going to move a motion, and I hope committee will support it, that if it's 10K and above, that we leave it as it is, and that we're allowed to recognize the sponsors, and the councillors can sign that thank you card to those sponsors, which is basically the plaque. So I'm curious if you'd like to speak to it as to where that came from, or if you're just happy with that amendment, then that's great. We'll go forward with it.
Mr. Curry, are you doing this one?
Sure. Just for clarification, Councillor, there is no specific delineation between mayor and councillor in the report. The recommendation came from our consultations. Members of council said that they didn't want cash in the parkland fund spent on the promotion of anyone, and so that's why staff brought forward that recommendation. Certainly, we would continue to put plaques on major capital projects per our existing policy in Parks and Rec. It just that funding wouldn't come from cash in the parkland funds. It would rather come from the total project cost.
And the word, again, arose that I find very objectionable is that you're suggesting this is some kind of promotional money. It's a thank you. We're putting a thank you out to the people that paid for this because we couldn't do this through the tax base. We've gone out to our community partners to provide us with benefits to the community. And they're not something simple. It's something over 10K to me is a serious contribution to our community.
I think there was two different things you said, though.
Sorry.
I think that the one where you started talking about sponsorship, where you're right, councillors are very active. Councillor Wilkinson raised $750,000 working with Ridgecraft for her center and the Minto Rec Center. I worked with that, and we've all done that in our wards. And I think that that's different than I think there's two things here. That is permitted, certainly, to have thank you to Ridgecraft, Minto, whatever, and have the appropriate name on as well, because you're doing the thanking. Am I right on that? That's currently the... Mr. Chenier?
Yes, Chair, you are right, that for our sponsorship programs, we do, as a matter of course, negotiate and then include a thanks to the sponsor. In fact, the sponsorship program does have a budget for activation of sponsorships, which includes, for example, at the Minto Barrhaven Complex, signage, both external, internal, a variety of things that are negotiated with a sponsor to make sure they're properly recognized for their contribution.
Right, on that one, because the whole name is that. But the other part that you brought up, Councillor Hubley, if I'm correct, is that if, and I think that I've seen this somewhere over the summer, if a project is totally funded through CIL that is put forward by any of the councillors around this table or on council, then in that case, if it's the CIL from that particular ward, then there would not be a plaque. Correct? So, for example, I'm putting $400,000 towards a skateboard park. I've been trying to save the money for 3 years. If I went and I said to one of the developers or to one of the large retail corporations, Walmart, whatever, and I said, would you be interested in making this a lot better by adding $350,000 or something, then that's a sponsorship. But if it's just my contribution of the CILs for Barrhaven Ward, then there wouldn't be any plaque. Is that correct?
So let me give you a specific example then, Madam Chair. Recently in my ward, we did improvements to a ball field. We were able to find a community partner that was willing to put in a new scoreboard, dugouts for the little leaguers to get them out of the sun, provide them some shade. They did some repairs to the fences that were falling over. The work totaled approximately $35,000. There was no money in any budget to pay for a plaque to thank the donor for doing that. So I took it upon myself to do that through the CIL funding because it was a park improvement. I believe Mr. Chenier helped me figure out how to do all that, but we had to use CIL for part of that project. if you will. So the concern, I believe, that prompted the comments in the report was to do with smaller purchases of, say, $1,000, $5,000, small items that, someone might put plaques all over their ward on, something like that. And I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to do that. I don't think this policy, however, is where we fix that. I would suggest to committee members and to council that we fix that in midterm governance when we talk about our code of conduct, a simple change to what you're allowed to spend during the blackout period could have fixed that problem that we're trying to deal with there. So I'll be bringing that up at midterm. Here, I'd like to have this policy amended to say that 10K and above on sponsorship files, that we continue to do the plaques, and if there's CIL funding being mixed in there, as you suggest, that you're in partnership here, as long as the contribution is more than 10K, that we be allowed to recognize that with a plaque. If the decision is made by the ward councillor, who is elected to make those decisions in that area by the people of that area. If the decision is made to do it, then I think it should be supported by the policy. That's what I'm asking for on that one. I hope people will agree to it. I have one more, which is the process change, and I'll say this, the changes have been approved in the park planning process that will move staff from a project manager role from the concept to delivery to a new advisory function of identifying minimum requirements for a park, and then coming back into the process afterwards, after the park is completed, to ensure that those requirements are met. The purpose of that was to allow us to speed up the work in parks. Councillor Lieber can tell us, you and I have talked about this. You've had delays waiting for park planners to be available to help you with projects. The whole idea of that change was to free up staff so that they could deal with the backlog while we allow the developers to take on the responsibility to build those parks at the standards that we set. So with those changes, I'm trying to understand why we are still looking for 3 additional staff. And a secondary question to that is, I'm hoping that the ratio throughout the department is not 1 manager to 2 staff, which is what's suggested in this report.
Through the chair, 2 of those staff would be in Parks, Recreation, and Culture, and it's really an approach that was developed in 2012 that we recommended to council and was approved at the time, and reflects the volume of work that the CIL funding stream has brought about, in addition to the regular capital budget stream and our own granting community partnership program stream that is growing annually. So I can certainly, since 2012, attest that there's been more than enough work to keep 2 FTEs busy. I can also advise that finding planners to do this type of work has been a challenge, especially with the positions being designated as only temporary. We have had difficulty attracting planners to the positions that are qualified and that can do the kind of work you're expecting. We've also had difficulty retaining them because as soon as something comes along that is permanent, they're gone. And compounded with that is the collective agreement position that temporary positions we can really only keep for up to a year. So those have been a challenge in keeping those positions, and that has resulted in some delays in dealing with the volume of CIL projects that are coming at us. We can foresee that for the coming year, when we layer on some of the Canada 150 projects and the other additional projects that there might be, including some of the life cycle pieces that we get involved with through community consultation, I believe there is more than enough work. Now, I believe one of the other positions is for the IS department, because we work in close partnership with them, and I think they could speak to their need in their department.
So why are we trying to now fund staff positions through CIL funding versus through the normal budget process that's supposed to supply enough staff to get the jobs done.
Through the chair, this was a strategy identified in 2012 and approved by council as a way of addressing this new pressure and having growth pay for growth. And so what this does is reflect the fact that part of the cost of building these growth-generated projects is a planner, staff to do the work, and the growth should pay for it. And so that has not changed in this report. We're still saying growth should pay for growth. The reality is that looking to the operating budget or tax support would probably be a difficult thing to achieve given the constraints. And so the department's ability to add 2 FTEs at the planner level would be a difficult thing in this budget climate.
I thought there was a portion of every project that went towards staff costs. That when you say growth pays for growth, I thought we put that into the cost of the project to cover staff costs.
Through the chair, yes, that's what was approved in 2012, and that's what would continue today. Projects over 100,000 get a 10% levy added to them, and those funds pay for the 2 positions that we're talking about.
Okay, so then the proposal, which I believe it's already kicked in, it came through the DC bylaw review to where we made that change that developers now take on the park because we find they will build them. You know, there was examples, Councillor Blaise not here today, but I believe he had an example of waiting 10 years for a park because of the workload for the planners and other reasons. We made that change in the bylaw review to allow developers to build those parks a lot quicker because there's obviously benefits to them and to our communities to have the parks done a lot quicker. Shouldn't that reduce the workload for these planners? Because they were project managers before. I know in my 5 years here, I've seen where, sorry Dan, I know I don't normally go on like this, but this is something that...
No, you don't, and just to let you know that normally everybody has a 5-minute turn, yeah. So I'm going to ask you to finish your thoughts now.
I'm done at this point.
And then I'll put you back on.
Thank you. I think we're going to be done here.
Well, hang on.
If that's okay, or you want me to stop now?
Finish your thought, because then, just to let you know, Councillor Shirelli, it's not his turn to speak, but he has a point of order that he wants to bring up, and I'm going to ask Mr. Mark to comment on.
So I'll just make this one thing and ask Mr. Chenier to answer. My experience has been that the planners are almost project managers. Like they've been very involved in delivering the parks right from start to finish. I know a number of these planners quite well because they've spent a lot of time in my office because I've got some great parks built during my term of council here, and so I'm very proud of them. But they're doing a lot of work that I didn't think would have been part of the park planner duty. And so this move, when this came out in the DC bylaw, I saw this as something that actually made their jobs better and got them back to doing what we hired them to do, and that is design and plan the parks. So I'm hoping you're going to agree that there's and maybe what the answer here, Madam Chair, is that we extend these temporary projects to the next budget cycle and see if those changes have made any difference in the workload this year, and if so, then maybe we have to pick this up in the budget process.
Madam Chair, we're talking about if you will, 2 different types of parks. The one we did through the development charge bylaw were all the new parks. So that is a separate, if you will, Department Planning Growth Management deals with those new parks. Mr. Chenier's shops deals with the existing parks and the redevelopment of them. So that's what we're talking about today in terms of cash and new money being used for the redevelopment of the park. So there was no, if you will, no benefit to Mr. Chenier's shop from the change in the development charges bylaw, because basically there's 2 different sets of parks planners in it. So
sorry, Mr. Moser, when Mr. Chenier said growth pays for growth, I thought we had switched over to the planning.
And we have done that in terms of it, but certainly the redevelopment, rehabilitation of parks fall within, Mr. Shenry's shop, and again, part of the funds do come from the cash in lieu of parkland.
Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair, and I'll move the motion for those three changes, if that's okay.
Sure. And just to be clear to everybody, there, as somebody representing a growth ward, I have contributed CIL funding to brand-new parks where there wasn't enough money to really do what the community wanted. Simple things like trees and that, we just run out of money. Adding a feature, a swing, adding a gazebo on brand-new Kilburnie Park as a perfect example, splash pad, and that, raising money in the community, supplementing a new park with some CIL. So it does happen that way too, but today what we're talking about is the typical CIL. Now, Councillor Shirelli had a point of order. Just, you don't really have to make it a point of order. Just say what you want to speak in.
Just in the first part of your motion, where you talk about plaquing, and you have the situation you want to exist for the next year and a half, and then you want it subject to review by midterm governance review. I think the motion has to actually say that it will be reviewed at midterm governance review.
Sorry, for clarification, I wasn't talking about plaquing being reviewed. It was the issue that I think we were trying to deal with this policy with respect to smaller items below 10,000 and spending during the election period. That we can deal with that at midterm governance, not the whole issue of
I think it has to say in the motion that you're doing, otherwise it requires reconsideration to do it at midterm governance.
So, Mr. Mark, what would your sage advice be on this? Should we be adding some words so that we don't have to deal with reconsideration at midterm?
That would be prudent, Madam Chair.
So perhaps you could...
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Okay?
Yes, but this motion that's being passed around right now, it still includes that word that I find very objectionable, and I want it removed from this motion. So...
Which one?
They're still calling it promotional. After, this is not promotional. This is a thank you to the sponsors. And
so do you want? So
I thought I made it clear, but I guess not, because this
it's also historical.
What's historical?
Well, a lot of plaques we have on buildings, people like to go around and see who was around at that time, who was part of it. When you do anything from Lansdowne to Miracle League to anything like that, at some point in the future, people want to see what was happening back then. And I don't think we should stop doing it just because, one member of council commemorated themselves.
So, Councillor Hubley, because you're only the first speaker, and I have a lot of speakers, I'm going to suggest you have a look at this and then recommend changes, because I think what's problematic is that any items that could be perceived as promotional. There's a different way of writing that, and I think that it's.
And according to Mr. Mark, we should put something in here about referral to midterm governance. Done. I'll put it together and get it circulated.
Okay. So you take the time to do that, and we're now Councillor Brockington.
As they say, talk amongst yourselves.
Pardon? Well, or the long list can start talking. Councillor Brockington, followed by Councillor Chernachenko.
I would appreciate if you would all listen intently about what I'm about to say. No, I want to thank staff, first of all, for bringing this report to us. I think it's very important to, on a cyclical basis, review our policies and bylaws, and I think this is smart. And certainly, there have been issues in the past that have been brought to the public's attention that I think have also contributed to the need just to review the policy and talk about what's best moving forward. So I appreciate the dialogue that we're having here this morning, and I do have a number of questions as well. Councillor Hubley has touched upon some, which I will skip. First of all, I want to flag on page 2, staff talks about you will provide more information to councillors on priority projects planned for future use of funding. That's critical for me to know what sort of the medium to long-term plans are in my ward, so I can share that with the community, talk about what the timelines are, talk about with potential sponsors what projects are coming, and also to know what not is on staff's radar screen. So again, I can develop a plan moving forward. So I wanted to flag that and let you know how important that is. Skip over one point for a second. The percentage, or the formula that's used to distribute funds to the city accounts versus the ward account, the 60-40 split, can you just elaborate on how that number was derived?
Madam Chair, that was a point of discussion when the policy was, I think, in 2009, was reviewed. There was discussion in terms of what was the appropriate split between the ward and citywide. There was some discussion of a 50-50 split between citywide and the wards. And when the policy was approved by council, the decision was taken to split it 60-40 to be able to have the, if you will, the majority of the monies used within the ward to develop parks or redevelop parks. So that was the decision in terms of the discussion that took place, and again the majority going to the ward as opposed to citywide.
Thank you. One concern that I have about amending the policy to now allow funds to go into repairing or renewing lifestyle replacement projects, which up until now have not been permitted, is that we could run the risk that some wards will have Cadillac-style parks because their councillor-led funds have a large number of funds available to them. My concern in River Ward is twofold. Number one is I have basically nothing in my account to draw from. And secondly, I have in multiple segments of my ward very needy communities which would always struggle to raise these funds. And I draw on my experience as a school board trustee seeing various school councils struggle to raise funds for various initiatives within that school community. And we saw time and time again other school communities which were in affluent areas or had a much more involved school council able to raise tens of thousands. There are some schools that raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in a given year, and they are able to offer their communities a much more fulsome offering. And so I'm concerned that if my funds are now going to go towards, or at least I'll have the ability to repair and renew park assets in River Ward, I have nothing to contribute to that. I probably will have nothing of significance to contribute this entire term of council because there's so limited building or development in my ward to begin with. The contributions to get anywhere near even a simple play structure will take years to contribute to. And yes, the account is now out of deficit, but we're about $10,000, I think the last report said. So this is a concern of mine that there may be wards just by the fact that some wards are, and I put quotes on this, blessed with development and able to generate a significant contribution to this fund, that they will be able to keep pace with the needs of their community, and there are going to be other wards that just simply can't do that. So I would like to ask staff their comment on whether it would be acceptable to amend the formula used that directs funds to certain wards from 60-40 to 100% for River Ward for this term of council. And the intent would be strictly to rebuild an account that has been completely exhausted for, I would defend, very legitimate projects. The monies that were used last term of council in River Ward for parks and rec improvement were needed and were dispersed throughout the ward. But if we're now going to amend a policy to allow all councillors to identify repair and renewal and life cycle work, I'm at a significant disadvantage because I have no funds. And one way to address that is not to use taxpayer dollars, but is to amend the formula so that when development takes place and monies do come in, we can fast-track that development by amending the formula for this term of council. So I would like a comment on the feasibility of this.
I don't think that that is actually something that staff are going to make a comment on. Your suggestion that you be allowed to have a different position than the rest. I think you do have some money in your account right now. It's in the positive. What is it? Do you know?
My understanding, it's about 10,000, but I could be wrong.
And just so, unless this staff wants to comment on it, I don't think it's fair to put that to them. If Ms. Similik, do you have any comment?
The memo that went out, I think at the end of June, showed $7,500 in his account.
Okay, so please carry on, but it's not, it wouldn't be fair to have them comment.
Well, I want to make sure it's legal. No one said it's not something that can't be done, but...
Mr. Mark? Wanting an exception for one ward.
Madam Chair, I don't think I could say it's illegal. It is highly unusual.
I'm just raising a flag that if the policy, the proposed amendments did not include renewal life cycle repair work, which were not included up until now, I probably would be okay not proposing this idea. But like I said, I'm not going to be able to address any of those needs that exist, either new needs or repair needs, because there's no money. We just went through the priority initiative in July, and Mr. Chenier indicated that councillors had $75 million of new initiatives, and there's a $2 million pot. That highlights the needs that exist in our community that we can't even address. My challenge is, as I've said many times, there are no funds to do that. So I need to think of innovative ways, without going to the taxpayer, to address the issues that exist in my community.
Well, I can tell you that one new program from the province that would probably help you in the at-risk communities that you represent is a community hub program that they've just launched. I think Minister Nakvi certainly sent me some information on it, and I'll actually be meeting in Toronto in the middle of September on that and some other stuff. And I see that as some opportunities. So I think those are the opportunities. But also, staff did talk about how they look at the city holistically and they prioritize projects as from the highest that are necessary. So perhaps for you, you need to be, if you're aware of situations, and if you haven't already met with Mr. Chenier, and probably you have, and certainly other, you have other partners as well in some of those areas. I think that that's the way. I mean, I can't speak for committee and council, but as Mr. Mark said, it would be rare to have that sort of an exception made for one ward. And if you look at the balances and remembering that this is the first time we've ever been allowed to spend money on life cycle. So none of us have ever had that opportunity before. Anyways, it's interesting. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I mean, I've provided a fulsome list for the Canada 150, just like everyone else. The provincial funding that recently came out, Mr. Chenier and I have met many times. He's well aware of the needs in my ward, and I continue to meet with many community partners. In the grand scheme of things, even if the formula was changed, it's probably an extra $2,500. So, that's 2/3 of a park bench. So I wouldn't be receiving a lot of new money, but I understand there would be a different formula used for one ward over the others, and maybe that's open to debate and discussion. I'm going to think about it between now and council, Madam Chair, and maybe meet with staff to address this, but I'm just putting the issues of my ward on the table, and everyone's well aware of the financial challenges that my account has for me.
And it goes to council on September 9th. Okay? Thank you. Councillor Chernachenko?
Thank you very much, and hearing both Councillor Hubley and Brockington's comments so far, it just underlines how diverse this city is and the different needs of different wards and different situations. I can only speak with direct knowledge to my own, a central ward that has seen modest, sort of moderate infill when compared to, say, Kitchissippi or Centertown. We've got a, medium amount of funds available to us in the cash and lieu fund, but it's there because through very close consultation with my community associations, they've identified specific projects that they wanted to save money towards so that when they had enough money was built up, that work could be done. So what might look like, hey, you've got a pot of gold there that you're just sitting on, waiting for the right day to spend, rather that's been a conscious effort to, okay, we need to get to $120,000 to build something that's been identified as a specific need. And the situation in wards that are intensifying, of course, is you've got more people using the very limited amount of parks and park facilities. So the wear and tear, not that the wear and tear isn't there in other parks, but it's going to intensify along with the added population. So that's really where I'm coming from with my couple of questions here now. It has often been a frustration from community members when they've heard with the existing policy, no, I'm sorry, that's life cycle repair, that's maintenance. This money is for additional capacity, so to speak. The money was contributed in recognition that more people are living here, therefore we need more capacity. Of course, if you can't, very difficult to create a new park in a dense urban area, so it's typically gone towards adding some new equipment, putting an additional slide on or something like that, while existing ones are sometimes deteriorating. So while I get that the pressure has been there, the frustration has been there that we can't spend it on repair, that's a double-edged sword, because now we may find ourselves where all the pressure is to put it in repair and our population is growing, so we're not growing. I'm not sure in the end how this is really going to turn into a question rather than just flagging that this is a double-edged sword, this is a concern. Is there any sense from staff that you would feel the need to be putting the pressure on a councillor and the community, to be doing maintenance? I guess, what is your response to that fear that money that is being banked to add capacity is now going to be eaten up to do simple safety repairs? We're going to have to close that play structure unless this repair is done, and guess what? Your cash in lieu is the only money available. Councillor, what would you like to do now? Do you have any comments on that?
Through the chair, the life cycle dilemma that we've lived over the last few years has been primarily focused on situations where a park amenity has lost play value and the community and the ward councillor wants to restore that. And that's everything from tennis courts that are so badly cracked that you can no longer play tennis, to a whole variety of park amenities, benches you can no longer sit on, that kind of thing. And so kind of speaking to the notion of perhaps moving towards, some wards would move towards Cadillac versions, most of the real examples that we've had are park amenities that are still 2 or 3 years away from being replaced, yet no one can use them anymore. And that's where we're getting, as staff, we're getting a lot of public feedback, and councillors as well. You need to do something because people won't go to the park or people won't use the park because what's there isn't. So in those instances, we found it difficult because often there are funds there, and the main thing that needs to be done in a park is to restore play value through an existing structure or amenity type of thing. But on the other side, we appreciate that it's a slippery slope, that getting into complete life cycle replacement could remove things that still have life, that could replace things that aren't really related to play value, but just to aesthetics or to better functionality of the park. So we struggle with it as well, and we hear the same complaints that some of the things that we have really do need to be replaced, not just fixed for another couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I certainly haven't seen any parks in Capital Ward threatening to become Cadillacs. I venture to say more like Ladas being held together by binder twine in a few cases. Maybe I'm going a little overboard there. We're doing our best to keep them up to a decent standard, but nothing approaching a Cadillac. I guess that's really all. What I especially want to flag with any policy changes is that money that's intended to add capacity in order to keep pace with growing population in a particular area could far too easily be siphoned off and used to hold together what's there now, and so we will just see 3,000 people using a park where 2,000 people did before, with the inevitable faster wear and tear that comes with that. So that's something I'll want to be very wary of as we debate and ultimately perhaps approve these policy changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chiarelli, and then Councillor Leiper.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I will be a bit random here, but I guess my first point is, when we were dealing with this question, if we look back to the arguments being given to Council just 8 months ago about what cash in lieu funds should be used for, and why they couldn't be used for life cycle and repair. Those arguments that were given to us as of 8 months ago, as of 5 years ago, as of 6 or 7 years ago, they all made sense, at least up to 8 months ago. So I'm wondering what changed. I think what changed is there was no money put in the budget to do the life cycle and repairs. And, that should not be the reason for changing a policy that otherwise seemed to be meeting needs as they crept up in each of the urban and quasi-suburban wards at least. What is the CIL fund normally used for? I know in my ward and adjacent wards, and I think Councillor Brockington made a good point about this, it's to do things like when projects occur but lack certain elements that everyone thinks should be there, like if a splash pad's built but there are no benches included in the project, you can go and include a couple of benches. If demographics change in your area and you go from an area that used to be young families and suddenly it's majority senior citizens, they have different needs in a park, and we want to put those in and deal with them. When a community suddenly creates a walkway through an existing park and it's a beaten down path and the community wants to formalize that path and they need $15,000 to do it, we can do that. This is the only source of moderate park improvements for existing communities. This is the only funding source for that. And if we allow CIL funds to be used for life cycle and repair, then we know what's going to happen. When the budget's written, they will look and they will say, okay, we don't have to fund as much into life cycle and repair as we normally do, because we can count on the councillors to just gut that funding source, the CIL funding source, and use it to cover the shortfall in life cycle and repairs. It stops us from doing responsible budgeting at budget time. It's a Band-Aid that covers really a gaping hole in the way we do the budget. And what's strange to me is the very arguments that were raised by all of staff up to just months ago we're now being told they were wrong and that we should be doing the other thing. Well, I look at what other cities do. Toronto is one that will use its CILs for repairs. But you go through most of the other cities in Ontario, you'll find that half of them, the only source, or practically the only target, or practically the only target of CIL funds is to create new parkland. That's the majority across Ontario. And go to other cities, and they want to make sure that anything spent on, anything the CILs are spent on is an actual improvement to a park. And the reason for this is the reason for the tax, for the CIL tax, is to replace the parkland that companies, developers were supposed to give to the city. So when they can't give the parkland, they give money to enhance, expand, and improve our parks. They're not giving it for repairs and life cycle. That's not the purpose for which we tax. So there is a clause in legislation that lets you use it for repairs and life cycle, but most recognize that the purpose of the tax is to add to the parks that are there. It's not to become a funding source of operations of the city. So I think it's just inappropriate to allow CILs to be used for this purpose. Secondly, I think if we do allow it to be used for this purpose, it's the beginning of the end. In fact, it may be also the end of this source of funding for moderate park improvements in existing neighborhoods. You're never going to have that problem out in the suburbs beyond the Greenbelt, because there'll always be DCs to pay for parks, and you can actually acquire new land and make new parks, but you can't do that in the middle of City View, as a lot of you heard in the last budget consultations. So I think that element, while it looks sweet or it looks attractive, it's the cheese in the mousetrap, and we will regret doing it, and our communities will regret that they will no longer have an opportunity to try to make modest improvements to their community's park.
I'm going to ask Ms. Similik to comment.
So first of all, as the councillor pointed out, it's not illegal. The Act actually does allow you to use this funding for repair and replacement of existing park assets. Number two, I guess I would say, I don't see this change as being in any way affecting how ISD comes up with their priorities every year for doing park repairs and replacements. It's going to be the same process. They're not going to look at this and say, well, we won't give anything to Ward 12 because we know they have lots of cash in lieu of parkland. They get an envelope, they go through a process, and they identify the priorities on a city-wide basis. So even Councillor Brockington, who has very little money in his account, if his parks are a priority, they'll be done with city money as opposed to cash in lieu of parkland money. And I guess my last comment is that you're right, this came about because this last budget there were a number of parks that councillors had expected to be done, but the priorities had to change because of changes in legislation and how we dealt with the electrical code. And so parks got pushed off, and so they wanted to advance those, so we considered this. So the question became, are you going to tax more for this, or are you going to look at what right now you're looking at $13 million in your cash in lieu of parkland fund? Are you going to dip into that instead? It became a question of taxation from increasing that or using resources you already have available to you. The legislation permitted it. It was a simple decision to say, let's change the rules we wrote ourselves to make them comply with the provincial rules, to allow that to happen, to give this corporation more financial flexibility, to allow councillors to have work done when it needs to be done, as opposed to waiting until we get that little meager increase every year in the park renewal project account. And that's my comments, Councillor.
Thank you.
You know, at our only budget consultation that we had in the West End last time, it's easy to say, well, it's not going to affect what the priorities are, but when a group did ask for money for their project, the answer given was, why don't you use the CIL fund? Well, that's not what the CIL fund was supposed to be for. And so no matter how you slice it, if it's being used to prevent taxation, that's one way to look at it. But you're also taking the money out of its current use to be used for an operational purpose. And because the annual life cycle and repair is, well, most people view it as an operational function of the city. It's not to enhance an existing facility.
I get what you're saying. I just wanted to point out, too, that, yes, Councillor Brockington's cash in lieu is low at $7,500 or so, but so is Councillor Taylor at $19,000 and Councillor Deans at $26,000. Just. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just saying that, and sometimes it's because a previous councillor or a current councillor invested a lot of money into a project that was important. The next speaker is Councillor Leeper. On the issue of growth and in the suburbs and never being a problem, that's not true. Our new subdivisions, our developers pay. The Minto Rec Center was, what was the percentage paid for by development charges, Kevin? Was it 91%? Something like that. But my point is, in a community like Canada or Orleans or Barrhaven, where we're not all a new place, we have got lots of needs. Sure, we're not as old as when I was 6 months and lived in City View in the early 50s, but we do have areas like from the late 60s where those people want to have splash pads. They want to have stuff like that, and that will never be. We have parks also that have those metal slides, and so I've often said to Dr. Levy, I've said to him, you should be saying, don't let your little kids' butts hit those slides, because it's a hot day. While they're drinking water, get them to throw some on the slide. I mean, we have those in the burbs as well. So the ability to use CILs, which we never have, which is part of this package, I think it's a selective opportunity that we can take when we know it's not going to rise on the calendar any faster for the staff that are looking at it without any people involved. We all represent those people whose tiny little tushes are going down that hot metal slide. I'm going to go to Councillor Leeper, please.
Thank you, Chair. The whole package contains a couple of items that I think are very positive and that I would like to speak to and ask a question of, and that I'm hoping we'll see go through if the overall package of recommendations goes through. And as I listen to the debate around the table, I'm still not certain that I'm comfortable supporting the bigger recommendations. I'm absolutely hearing from my residents the discomfort with using cash and yield funds to fund our life cycle renewal. They are asking me to stand tight to the principle that maintenance of our parks is a function of what they pay taxes for, and I'm very cognizant of that. Groups like the Green Space Alliance. I'm also not sure I'm comfortable, after listening to our treasurer, with the concept of creating an obligation against future budgets. Currently, the Ottawa economy is moving kind of all over the place. Priorities are changing. We've seen some high-level shifts in priority that are require ISD and parks to spend money on projects they hadn't anticipated spending money on. Creating obligations against future budgets is not something I'm necessarily comfortable with. But a couple of the things in the package are really attractive. First, I want to congratulate staff for speaking so strongly in a report to the need for more transparent reporting. This is something that the residents of my community have been seeking for a couple of years now. I'm looking forward to having those really transparent conversations with our residents. The second piece of it is the with respect to, what are we calling it, project selection. How do we select the projects that are going to be funded with cash in lieu? I take a look in my ward. I've probably got 20 different projects, all of them very legitimate, representing millions of dollars worth of asks if we were to fund them all. It's difficult for me as a councillor with the limited resources I have to do a rich job of consulting with my residents in terms of how that money should be spent. I am grateful for the suggestion in the report that staff are going to set up a process, lend some resources to the effort to create some priorities for us in spending that money. I think that will be a big help to councillors in particularly busy urban wards like mine, where there are so many asks on the table. And to that end, I've been asked, and my understanding is that there are a number of councillors who would like to be part of a pilot in terms of how we set that new process out. It'll take some time to get it right, and I'm wondering if staff would take it as a direction that in establishing that process, that they would pilot it in some of our urban wards first, particularly Capital, Somerset, Rideau Vanier, and Kitchissippi wards.
Through the chair, yes, we would take that direction from committee to look at those wards as pilots.
Thank you, and I'm very interested to continue listening to the discussion around funding life cycle versus not. This is a critical discussion for us as we face some very lean budgets moving ahead, and what our approach to budgeting is going to be, and what residents of Ottawa think that they're getting when they pay their tax bill every year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Just a reminder, my ward's also an urban ward. Feel free to throw me in the mix there. Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have to say that when I first landed here and got that first memo with that number beside my name, it was met with both amusement and amazement. Amazement because I'd never had a number like that attached to my name. As many of you know, my cash in lieu is large, which quickly turned to amusement because as soon as I started looking at some of the things that we need to do in Centretown, I realized that it's actually not a lot of money. What we need in Centretown here is new green space. We need new opportunities for parks. And we can have all the nice shiny new equipment that we want, but as we intensify it, it gets used, and it's just not enough space. We have entire communities throughout the ward that actually don't have a park available to them. Many of them, count on their local schools and for that kind of park space. So, which is a whole other discussion around how we might, start partnering with our school boards. So for me, I look at, how do you separate out what the real needs in a community are, like Centretown, and I understand the needs of the suburban needs, and that we have people moving in there too, and the need for some renewal, but our parks, the renewal and life cycle for our parks was meant to be covered through our normal budget process. It is what people expect their tax dollars to pay for. Was not meant to be covered by the money that we receive because of the intensification of development in our wards. That was meant to enhance our parks. I have got examples in my ward of, 3 parks that were recently enhanced, a new skateboard that I invite anyone to go out and watch, hundreds of kids every day enjoying that, new splash pads. That is what the cash in lieu is meant to cover. So my concern is that for a downtown ward like the one I represent, is that if I am going to start lending myself money for renewal and life cycle, as much as $1 million might seem like a lot of money, when I'm looking at building a new park, finding an opportunity for a new park, and I always am, there are lots of opportunities. We've got lots of surface parking that could be replaced with green space. We've got abandoned homes that we could purchase, and create green space. But that is a lot of money to do that. $1 million doesn't go far whenever you're looking at establishing one or two small parks in the downtown, and they're crucial. We do not have enough green space in the downtown. So, I also have not, I've not decided on where I'm going to land on this, but I think that for me, I'm not convinced that setting a policy where I'm going to start lending myself money for renewal and life cycle, which is really a function of our budget and our taxes. And if if our tax rate's not high enough, then that's something that we as council need to look at. But I don't see anywhere in this policy where the wards or the neighborhoods that need new parkland are that they're going to that's going to be made any easier. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment or just take that away, but that is where I struggle with that part of the policy. I agree with Councillor Leeper. There are a lot of good things in this report, and dealing with parkland and parks in a city that's as diverse as ours is difficult. And I know what the pressures are in the suburban communities. I was fortunate enough to work with suburban council for years. I understand it quite well, and I want to make sure that whatever we come out with today is, best for the entire city. I understand the pressures of a ward like River Ward as well that has a lot of lower income communities. So, but in terms of creating new parkland, in terms of even compelling developers to actually find ways of providing our downtown communities with parkland, might cost them a little bit more, but I think it's incumbent upon us as a city to make sure that as we're intensifying, we're getting additional green space.
Well, I think that there's two things happening here. I think that what we're talking about today would not include that new parkland in your ward, for example. But certainly that's why with this Section 37 where you do accrue more money, the developers by law have to pay a certain amount of money when a park cannot be built. And so you really have those two options. I see what your goal is more with meeting with the Mr. Gord McNair and his team, and having them be on the alert for opportunities that you can apply for funding and using your resources and working with the capacity of projects coming along. That's probably your best bet, because they're not going to be looking for new parkland, nor are we able to get that kind of money unless it's a very large project. Mr. Mizzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps I could provide a little extra comment that for a number of the wards inside the Greenbelt, the department is looking at for larger sites that have a lot area of greater than 4,000 square meters, of actually using the Planning Act provision, the legislative authority, to take a conveyance of land, because at 10% of 4,000, you'd have a 400 square meter size park, which is actually meaningful. And so we've engaged in discussion with the development industry to let them know it's a path we want to explore and start to actually obtain land rather than only cash all the time.
That may be a workshop takeaway, Councillor Leeper. It was working on the community forum with me that we may want to have that as an item. I ask you, Court, to take that to Charmaine to discuss. Might be something that would be of great interest to the people, particularly those that are going to come out, to provide them with a workshop during that event. When is it, November the 9th? Or 2nd? It's in November. It's a Saturday in November, and we're just starting to work on it. Okay, that would be good. Thank you very much. Councillor Kadri, and then Councillor Tierney, and then Councillor Blais.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just got a couple of questions. First of all, in terms of the, I know it's a different program, but the funding committed under the strategic initiative of $2 million annually, one of the items that I read on there is leverage other sources of internal or external funding in order to qualify your project for that. I had just put out a survey in my community based on that kind of request of a $2 million envelope, and not for the full $2 million, but just, what projects would qualify. So far, I've received something like 41 different ideas from the community on park improvements. And so my question comes not necessarily from that funding aspect, but also from the standards aspect. I mean, there are some parks that, at least in my area, that are 40, 50 years old that do not meet up current standards. How are we handling those current standard upgrades? Because I know before they were handled through the park budget, and now if you're suggesting that renewal of assets could be done through CIL, I don't know whether I want to spend my money on parks that have fallen behind the standards. So if you have a comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Through the chair, Councillor, you are correct that right now, for the most part, standards, pieces of equipment that fall beyond standards are generally replaced through the life cycle program when they come due. When I spoke earlier about some of the frustrations we're hearing in the wards is that often those things that need replacement that are beyond standard or are a past a model that no longer kids play on, we often get the pressure to increase them, and that's where we receive most of our requests to spend CIL when something isn't being used. But for the most part, it goes back to either Mr. Newell's life cycle program or special initiatives through communities, and we've seen a lot through our community partnership grants program, for example, of communities that just don't want to wait and have the ability to fundraise, and we will match their funding. But those are really the only avenues, and often that isn't enough to move things along in some communities fast enough. We are getting, you mentioned the strategic program that's approved for this year. We are getting from a lot of the councillors their list of outstanding needs, and a lot of them do relate to those kinds of situations where you have outdated equipment that's still theoretically functional, but of no interest to the community, and they want to see it replaced with something more modern. And that is figuring very prominently on the list that we're receiving across the city.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chenier, but my question still remains that in terms of the CIL funds, if we're allowed to use those funds for renewal projects, would those funds be eligible to be applied to standard projects where the project does fall under upgrade through the city program? And if so, then why would that be? Because now all of a sudden we're changing that perspective of city funding on parks that are not approved by current standards, for example. To me, that's a function that has always been a city park function. Thanks. To upgrade those, and that's where it should remain and not be chosen out of CIL funds.
Through the chair, I think what would be helpful if I turned it over to Kelly Martin, our acting manager of asset management, to talk about how we prioritize life cycle improvements every year and a little bit about what goes into the infrastructure services side of the equation. Kelly.
Chair, the ISD has, as you know, stewardship over the renewal and life cycle program for a number of assets, park assets included. We do, as was indicated through the treasurer in a number of questions earlier, work at identifying deficiencies. Standards or function on the use is one, but paramount is safety. Or changes in legislation that rise to the top in terms of priority. But we do take all of those factors into consideration. We work within affordability envelopes, as was indicated, and we prioritize projects on that basis to formulate our annual programs. In instances where there's quite obviously has been in the past a underfunding or shortfall of funding to address the priority needs. We then look at our envelopes from a tax perspective. There are a number of assets, as I indicated, that are funded through taxes, not only parks but buildings, and we annually have a review of where the pressures are, and to the extent that we have capacity in our envelopes, we balance within those. I do want to point to the fact as well, I think it was touched on July 7th, that the life cycle renewal programs did identify a need to increase funding. That was brought to Council in 2012 as part of our comprehensive asset management program and the program that was established following that. And we are looking at increased funding to our life cycle programs on the tax side as a result of that, with the view of doubling approximately what had been historical funding by 2022. So from an overall perspective, we put safety and legislative requirements obviously at the top of the list. Functional use is considered in there, but it is factored in as we can schedule it.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's see where I am now. Councillor Tierney and then Councillor Blais.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I did want to thank Dan Chenier and your department. I think you're one of the hardest working guys in the city. So I say that all the time, and I'm trademarking that. That's yours. No disrespect to everybody else. Everyone works very hard, but Dan works exceptionally hard. That being said, I represent a ward that is... that's right, allocations, that's right, I need something. No. I'm not the grease of CILs like Riley, but I'm in the lower bracket. And I have concerns about a couple of things that I've done in the past. I want to ensure I can continue today. So if I can give you just a couple of quick examples, and if I can get staff response on them, it will help me make a better decision. One of them was the library in my area is situated next to the splash wave pool. Now, based on the list of ineligible projects, it says anything associated with lands that's not a public park. So it wouldn't be a public park. It is city land. I want to revitalize that piece of land in between with a bench and mow the lawn, take some weeds out. Can I apply my CILs to that?
I believe you may, but I'd just like to confer with Mr. Mark.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was reading a draft motion. Well, I apologize. What was the question?
So I guess within these new rules, it actually highlights the fact if it's not a public park, we can't apply that money. And in this situation, I have a splash wave pool and a library next to each other with a small swath of land in between both, which is full of weeds. I want to put a bench and mow the lawn so people can read books beside the library. Would I be able to apply my CILs to that with this new regime?
If I understand the scenario, the swath of land is it city? Well, is it city owned?
It is, but it is not designated as a park.
I don't believe there'd be a problem with that, Madam Chair.
Yeah, so you can see where I have to ask the questions now because we can't go back in the time machine later, and I'm not getting a real solid yay on that, so I'm a little concerned. Another example.
Mr. Mizzi has comment on that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, attached to the report in the appendix is the actual cash in lieu of parkland policy. And an ineligible project, under the definition section on the very last page, under ineligible, it says any capital project associated with land that is not a public park. So it's ineligible if it's not related to a public park.
Correct, and I think that's the fear I have, is being able to make those changes.
So maybe what you want to do is change it to park or facility. Would that be okay, Mr. Mark?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So did you want to consider that?
Well, yeah, I think I'll definitely be adding, I like your wording, Madam Chair. That's one example. Another example would be, we did an expansion on the splash wave pool. The diving club that wanted to use that for their lane swims didn't have the pedestals. I was able to, back in 2011, I was able to apply some CIL money to actually get those diving platforms. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to run their dive schools. Would I be able to apply my CIL funds under this new regime in a similar situation?
Through the chair, generally the test we've put to that is that they be permanent capital improvements to a recreation facility, and in this case, because these dive pads were considered that, they were deemed eligible, and I don't see anything in this policy that would change that.
No, and I don't. Like, I'll give you an example. The Canadian Little League Championship, over the last several years, myself and with the help of Councillor Taylor have used CILs, put flagpoles up. I used mine for the scoreboards, for the pitchers' cages and all that kind of stuff, because it's a benefit. And the scoreboard is on a facility, which is their media building. So I think that's something that we're doing already. There would be nothing different if I was to use the Walter Baker and investments that I've made over the years through CILs in that place as well. So I think that the term park is, I think, unless Mr. Mark says differently and you have to add facilities, park is a place where recreation takes place maybe.
Well, I'm actually interpreting it different. I think it's actually a legal, and Mr. Mark will correct us, if we don't change this wording now, we could be handcuffing ourselves to just what is defined as a park.
Well, we'd be changing what we're already doing.
Correct.
So, advice, Mr. Mark, should we just err on the side of caution and add facilities? Recreational facilities?
Madam Chair, erring on the side of caution is always easiest. I will note that I have been generous in my interpretations with respect to areas where the amounts can go in the past, but tidying up the wording to make it clearer as to eligibility would be desirable.
So maybe staff would like to provide a replacement line. I can push it forward as a motion if need be, whether it's city land or city facility, whatever, or city-owned, if that's the correct wording. I'd definitely like to see that. Whether it's direction or requires a motion, maybe you can answer that.
Madam Chair, I will write something up.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and just to be clear, so what we're saying is the large shopping complex, Chapman Mills Marketplace in Barrhaven, for example, has one bench. I mean, ideally, you know, over the years I can't even tell you how many people have said, I'd love to walk there, but I need a rest in walking. People, whatever, all ages. And yet that would not be something that I could contribute or Councillor Kakish could contribute to because it's not a city facility, right?
Yeah, so that was one example. So, and then also same with the diving platform example. Right. So those are two concerns, and hopefully whatever wording staff comes up with will resolve that issue so we can continue to still do what we do in our communities. Yeah. I also, going through the report, I was of one mind, trying to respect the taxpayer, which I always do. The FTE situation seems to be, you've sold me on it. We have a problem, and maybe I can ask for comment on that, on the fact, you know, when it comes to cycling, we've taken a strong stance in the city. We actually employ people to focus on that, but we don't apply the same level of criteria or support to our parks department. Having dedicated FTEs focused on parks, I think, is critical. Maybe I can get some feedback from you, Mr. Shenny, on that.
Through the chair, as I mentioned earlier, it's critical that we have a sufficient number of planners available to take on these projects. There are a lot of them, as councillors know, as ideas get generated out in the ward and requests to spend CIL money comes forward, and it's everything from the small projects to the more complex multi-million-dollar plus projects. Our experience over the last 2 years is that without planners dedicated to the CIL projects, there will be unacceptable delays in terms of getting these projects rolled out. And so that's why not only does this report recommend continuing what was approved in 2012 of funding planners through the CIL fund, we're also recommending that the positions be made permanent so that we have a better opportunity to attract and retain these hard-to-find skilled positions. In our minds, having experienced planners that know the wards, know the types of projects, and can get them done efficiently is critical to good administration of this program. And so that's why the recommendation is what you see in the report.
And thank you for explaining that, because I think, when we see FTEs being added on or a requirement for FTEs, everyone's flags go up around here because we know it's going to be tight for several years. But in this case here, you've sold me on it. I'll be supporting that aspect of it because parks are very important, and we have to spend a little more time on them, I think. Last question. We look at a scenario like the Miracle League Park that has been built. There was lots of people involved, and I didn't really get a lot of clarity on if we even spend one dime of CIL money, if there's placking allowed or not. I think the question was kind of there. It wasn't fully answered. In a situation like Miracle League, where there was lots of great sponsors and people that came out, would the councillor's name or councillors' names be allowed to be on a plaque like that, where it was a group effort and there was a lot of money involved?
Through the chair, I can advise that there was no CIL money. The city did contribute 50% of the project, but it was done through the Major Capital Partnership program. Right. And I don't believe there was any specific recognition to the ward councillor.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Blaine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A couple of quick questions. On the prohibition of the plaques, as I read the policy, that prohibition is only on projects that are funded through CIL, not rec centers and other larger facilities such as Lansdowne, et cetera?
Through the chair, solely through projects that are solely funded by CIL.
Perfect. A question to the treasurer, Ms. Simlick. Is it your understanding that if CIL funds are used for life cycle, that CIL is then paid back once that life cycle project would have otherwise come up in the budget, or is it you use it, that project falls off the list, and it's done?
I believe at the last meeting there was a motion put forward. The report does not recommend that, but I believe a motion was put forward to have it repaid back. Am I correct?
Through the chair, a motion was put forward. Staff were directed to review the issue, and we did, and said it in the memo, but there is no motion before, or no amendments to the report.
Perfect. So the recommendation is that it will not be, there is no recommendation to repay it later?
Correct.
Perfect. So given that, I don't understand all the concern and consternation, to be perfectly honest. I don't understand how this is an urban or suburban issue. If there's a park in Centertown that needs to be renewed, and it's not in the budget for a few years, and you want to use CIL, fill your boots. What it means is a park in my area goes up the list. Vice versa. If I choose to renew a park earlier, a park in your area goes up the list. You're elected to use good judgment. There's 24 people here that have control of what happens. If staff use it as an excuse to not fund renewal, which I don't think they'll do, as per the answer from the treasurer, we can change that. We can push back against that. We can give them direction, no, there has to be X dollars of renewal. It's up to every councillor to use their discretion, use their judgment as to whether or not replacing that play structure is the priority or adding a splash pad in this other park is a priority. That's what you're elected to do, is to make those decisions. I'd also I'm pretty sure that the project or the investment still needs to get the approval of the General Manager of Planning and Growth Management and the General Manager of Parks and Recreation. That's how I understood the project. So there should be some control on doing things that are perhaps unneeded. Is that still the case?
Correct. That provision of the policy remains.
So there is no reason for you to create a Ferrari if you still have a Lada. You should get some good advice as to whether or not that's a good investment or not. What this policy is doing is giving you the flexibility. We have the money. We don't have to raise taxes to get it. Use it for new stuff, use it to replace old stuff, it's on you. And the voters will decide if that's a good choice for your community or not. So I really don't there's no continuing obligation. There's oversight from professionals in both recreation and planning to provide you guidance and advice. And as I said, if we get budgets that go down the line that some people are concerned of, well, we're going to use CIL as an excuse not to fund renewal, then we push back on that and say, where's the renewal? That's what our job is. This is just opening the flexibility so that we all have some resources at our disposal. And if you don't want your CIL accounts to be really big, if you're saving up for that project, whatever that is, create an account for that project and move the CIL money over. And then it's not in your CIL account anymore. It's in the project account. And then you can do pay-as-you-go for that project, and you don't have the pressure of dipping into your CIL to do the renewal because you're paying as you go for this big mega project you're working on. All this does is provide flexibility to us to get the things that our community wants. I don't see why there has been this much consternation and delay and dithering over this. It's money we have. We're all elected to use good judgment. Do it or not. Use your judgment or not. Let's use it where everyone deems it the best place to be spent. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Well said. Thank you very much. Okay, so, we have a deferral motion which will go first. So if Councillor Shirelli wants to read his deferral motion.
Okay, I will do that as soon as, thank you. But first of all, I just wanted to answer some of those questions. First of all, staff...
First of all, I want to hear your motion.
Okay. The motion is be resolved the items in the report providing for the 10% surcharge, funding 3 permanent FTEs, and requiring quarterly reporting be approved. Further resolve the balance of the report be deferred for further consideration at the same time as midterm governance review. And
so what you're saying is defer the report with the exception of investing in the 3 full-time...
Yeah, and it was also supposed to, and the reporting, because I think the reporting should happen as well. So that's an error in the typing of the motion, but...
And the item requiring quarterly reporting.
Oh, yeah, it's there, okay. Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion. There's a motion of deferral.
On that.
And
so
as read, and now you're going to speak to it. And if anybody wants to speak to deferral, okay. Okay.
So again, first of all, I just wanted to clear up a couple of misconceptions from the previous couple of interventions. First of all, staff are not here to provide oversight on councillors. Councillors are here to provide oversight on staff. And that is one of the primary functions of an elected official. We are the ones that are elected to set priorities. We are the ones who are accountable to the voters. Everybody else is operating to fulfill the wishes of council. And so it's important that we not ever relinquish our duty to conduct oversight on staff. Secondly, you can only spend $1 one time. And if the dollar is there to be spent on improvements or enhancement to parks, but instead you spend it on life cycle maintenance and repairs, it cannot be spent on enhancing and improving on the parks. The reason we created this tax was to enhance and improve our parks, to create new parkland if we could, or if we couldn't, to enhance it and improve in a modest or minor way existing parks. Secondly, I never for 1 minute thought that staff would change the way they prioritize projects as a result of a change in CIL regulations. I think they will continue to provide the same professional recommendations. That's not where the problem happens. The problem happens with us at budget time. Like at the last budget, where we had a perfectly good list, and we're putting almost no money in to fund that list. They can give us a perfectly good list. If we have a budget that doesn't fund that list, it will make it almost obligatory that we use our CIL funds, which were collected for a different purpose, and use them for normal life cycle and maintenance at the city. So no matter how you cut it, changing the regulations from those that we followed and those that staff defended for so many years are going to create the exact repercussions that staff warned us they would when staff were taking the other point of view. So if we, notice, so the, well, I was already on the list before you asked me for the motion, so.
No, I didn't write you down again.
Okay. So the...
Because everyone, just so that everyone knows, I mean, I think I've been more than fair, and I haven't stuck to the 5-minute rule. Everybody's had a good chance to talk. So, so you're down to seconds now.
So on the motion, I don't think there is common agreement on what the placking issue is supposed to mean or what the definition of an allowed plaque or disallowed plaque is. I don't think there is agreement by all of council, let alone, well, maybe this committee, I don't know, but not by all of council on what CILs should be used for and whether changing that will mean we have no additional funding put in the budget for park renewal and upgrades. And thirdly, I don't think there's been enough contact with the public about what the 2 pockets of money should be used for. There are a lot of community groups out there who see this as their CCIL funds as their only opportunity to make any kind of improvement to their parks. And when they see that money suddenly eligible for use for everyday life cycle and repairs, they know it's gone.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blais, on deferral.
Yeah, and just to respond, so the use and determination of CIL projects is a delegated authority from council to councillors that needs to be approved by the 2 directors, as I said. And if you want to override it, you can by coming to council, and council as a group can override it. So no one is ceding any decision-making power or authority. Second of all, you get to decide if it's for renewal or for new parks or new amenities. And the community will hold you to account for that decision one way or the other. Deferring this, all it does is delay what improvements we might make to our community starting maybe this fall and into next spring. You know, if you're planning a big 100,000, 200,000, maybe even bigger park project, you need to start working on it now for it to get into the ground next year. If you want to do a big play structure replacement, which would be renewal, you have to start this fall to get it done, or get it started for next spring. By deferring, we're just delaying the opportunities for those investments in our community. There's no reason to delay it. If you don't want to use your CIL for life cycle, don't use your CIL for life cycle.
Yep.
Plain and simple. If you want to, gives everyone the opportunity to make the investments that are important for their community.
It's an option we didn't have before. Councillor Hubley and then Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to agree with my colleague, Councillor Blais, on this. As he said earlier, we are paid to make these decisions. We are elected by our community to make these decisions, and I think there's no need to defer this. We've had a very wholesome discussion of the issue today. As I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 motions here prepared. I've worked with staff to ensure the motions are proper. So after we deal with deferral, if we choose not to defer, I'm prepared to move those motions, and hopefully a good policy will come out of this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. On deferral, Councillor Brockington, then followed by Councillor Tierney. Hey, Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's turning into a bit of a bird's nest now. These are the different motions we've discussed on where things should go and where they shouldn't go, and who knows where things are going to get superseded or not. The whole point about the money is yours, spend it if you want or not. I have a bit of a situation with that. We changed some rules around how we manage traffic in our communities. And councillors might not be aware of this yet, but those nice speed boards that we put up, again, my name's not on mine, when we go to move them around now, we got to pay out of that traffic fund to move those speed boards. That was a service that was provided before. If we go ahead and say now we're going to use CILs for upgrades, you're opening Pandora's box. It's going to change the game. Of course you're going to have to go to CIL to do the upgrades. It's a very different venture when you go down this road. Also, we know that times are tough. The economy is going to change. So with all this confusion, all this paper in front of me about the different motions, it's a bird's nest. The one thing that I can definitely see, and just sitting around the table, is the FTEs are something that's critical. The reporting is critical. Can this wait a year or 2 years till we can get this package put together better? I think so. And for that reason, I'll be supporting Councillor Shirley's motion today.
Okay, so on deferral, we're going to have yeas and nays, and this is on Councillor Shirley's deferral motion. The deferral motion is, wait a minute. Well, it's not in the right order anymore. Be it resolved that the items in the report providing for the 10% surcharge funding 3 permanent, 3 FTEs, and requiring quarterly reporting be approved, but be it there further resolved that the balance of the report be deferred to be further considered at the same time as mid-governance. I will remind everyone that this is the second time we've had this before the Planning Committee. We have had every opportunity to have input for longer than that. Mr. Curry, when did Jake first start reaching out? When did that happen? Do you remember?
I believe it was early May, Madam Chair.
Okay, so this has been before us. I mean, I presume that people that are counselors have spoken to their community organizations that are involved in that sort of thing. So I guess I have to ask, what is the purpose of the deferral? But there's 2 parts to it. Did you want it separated, the parts? Okay. So on deferral, we have Councillor Blais?
No.
Councillor Brockington?
No.
Councillor Shirelli? Councillor Cloutier?
No.
Councillor Hubley?
No.
Councillor Leeper?
Yes.
Councillor Nussbaum? Councillor Kadri?
No.
Vice Chair Tierney?
Yes.
And myself, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 3 against deferral. Okay, now I have a series. Do I have all of the motions that are going to be before me? Just asking, because there's 3 of them. So, the first one is, and they're all moved by Councillor Hubley. Thank you for that work. Whereas councillors usually are the lead on sponsorship files and the sponsorship program requires recognition by the city that the city cannot provide all the extras that communities want from the tax-supported budget, therefore be it resolved that the following clause in the cash in lieu of parkland policy, which is the one that's in there right now, any items that could be perceived as promotional, including plaques or engravings containing council members' names, pictures, or likenesses, be amended to read, plaque, engravings, etc., acknowledging the funding source as a cash in lieu of parking account are not permitted on items with a value, total value less than $10,000, and be it further resolved that the issue of sponsorship during the blackout period in respect of members of council not seeking re-election be reviewed during midterm governance. Okay, so do you want yeas and nays on that as well? Yeas and nays on so Councillor Blais?
Yes.
Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli?
No.
Councillor Cloutier?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
Yes.
Councillor Kadri?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tierney?
No.
And myself, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2. I'm just going to mark these, Ms. Dufresne, that way, okay? On the second one we have is moved by Councillor Hubley. Whereas changes have been approved in the park planning process that will move staff from the project manager role from concept to delivery to a new advisory function of identifying minimum requirements for a park and then coming back into the process after completion to ensure requirements are met. Just to be clear, this is about new parks, right, for anybody who doesn't understand. Whereas the benefits of these changes are still being confirmed and it would be premature to make permanent the 3 positions, therefore be it resolved that the clause issue 6, adding 3 permanent positions, be deleted. Did you want to say at this time, or just deleted, period? Just deleted, and we'll deal with it. Okay. So on that, that's The second, Hubley. Councillor Blais? No, sorry. This is the one that says, therefore be it resolved that the clause issue 6. That's the one with the 3 permanent positions. Yeah, so if you support this, you're voting against the permanent positions. Well, glad that that's clear.
Yeah, we have saving, as mentioned in the discussion earlier on the policy, there's changes to the DC bylaw and other initiatives that we have underway that are freeing up the park planners so that they can do the work in the areas that have been waiting for planners. So, and it's too early in the process to make sure that they're going to address the waiting list. But why would you make positions permanent and then have to lay somebody off in a year's time if the program works the way we envision it will? So that's what you're faced with. Man up, make the decision today, leave it, and we see how this works, or defer it and do nothing.
Yeah, because I think that there's like yik and yak here. There's 2 different things entirely. What you're talking about is about new parks, and what this is about CIL. So staff, Kevin or Dan or Court, anybody?
Councillor, just to reiterate, there are 2 separate park planner teams, one in planning and growth management that looks after the development of new parks, works with developers. There are planners in my shop that look after the renewal of existing parks and CIL projects, most of which are in existing parks. The 2 positions that are in this report are to help support existing parks, the use of CIL funds to do the projects that are generated out of the 23 wards. So we don't really, at this point, benefit from any of the changes that may have gone on in planning and growth management.
And just to add to that, the one other position is the ISD position, which would be doing the opposite.
No, just to clarify, Chair, that person makes sure the park is actually built. That person actually builds the park.
That's what we're saying the same thing. Okay, so so you're saying not let any of them. Councillor Blais? Who do I have after Blais? Brockington.
I think this is really critical, right? Because the answer we just got, and no offense, Mr. Chenier, is that if we don't delete those, or if we allow those 2 positions to be filled or created, there is no incentive for Parks and PGM to talk and then save money on the resources. PGM is theoretically saving parks planning resources with our new parks development program. The parks planner used to do everything, manage the consultant, do the public meeting, the whole thing. Now the developers are basically doing everything, and the parks planner has some mild oversight with the councillor's office. We're disencouraging the departments to talk together and move resources around for, yes, they're held in separate departments, but at the end of the day, more or less the same function. I think we should encourage that coordination. Let's see what they can do. If there needs some bridging, hire someone temporarily. But I'd prefer to see if they can coordinate work together, actually either use those savings in PGM to help parks or however it's going to work before we go and create 2 or 3 new positions.
Can I just ask a question of staff then, based on what you just said? Our structure, our org chart, if you will, doesn't work that way. And that's why you have this separation right now. And whether it should, we all have different opinions on how things work, and it's taken us a long time to get to where we are today. But that's not what's up for discussion today, right? That'll be discussion that we have at a later date. So before I go to Councillor Brockington, Councillor Leeper, Councillor Shirelli, Councillor Chernachenko, I wanted to, on this one item, I wanted to just ask you to tell us succinctly why you need the full time. I know you've spoken to it, but I think that we need to understand that. And how it's going to be paid for, we know that that's going to be our 10%.
Chair, the two positions that were created as part of the 2012 report with the 10% levy to pay for them off CIL projects was a reflection that councillors had a level of frustration that the delivery on projects, given the short construction season and the volume of projects that Ward CIL funding had created, was really that we needed the horses to deliver those projects in a timely fashion. And so these positions are dedicated to very specifically take the projects that are generated from the CIL and delivering on those. The rest of the unit works on tax-funded capital projects, our grant projects that are generated, that generate capital projects, and it's simply a volume thing. And in fact, if there were resources from other departments that could come and do that, that's not I don't believe that that is a reality at this point, that both units, both the new park planning unit and the existing park planning unit, both have a lot on their plate.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Mr. Moser to just comment, Mr. Moser, on the benefit you see to staff resources with the new park build program that we have established.
Madam Chair, the new process is still in a transition stage from moving from all the new parks, whether they're citywide or community parks or neighborhood parks, being built by the city, to the industry building all the local parks and community parks. So we're in a transition for that. It'll be a number of years before it's 100% within the hands of the development community for, if you will, the greenfields parks. So we're in a transition. We still are building a number of parks. We'll probably be building parks still, well into 2017, 2018. We'll be building still the rural parks where there aren't many developers in terms of being able to do them. We'll be building any citywide or district parks, and certainly there'll be a role for us in terms of reviewing the developers' parks that come forward in the suburban area. So we are, as the motion speaks, we are in a transition, but we're certainly a number of years away to be able to say, yes, we can reassess the staff that we have in terms of the new park.
Thank you very much. Okay. Brockington? Councillor Brockington.
I think the question you asked was the main one. Instead of debating, it's just what is the impact on the departments without this staff,
right,
and whether or not we are willing to accept that risk or that impact. I'd like to know if we decide not to proceed with staff, but we want to deal with this at budget time, what the impact is in between now and then, if anything.
Yeah, we continue on with temporaries, which has been problematic for them keeping the resources, and they've been losing those people that they brought in to do that type of project.
So do members of the committee want to address this now or take them out and have a more fulsome discussion at budget time? I think that's the question that we should be considering. Thank you.
Okay. But if you're thinking of that, you may want to amend the motion. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you. I'm looking to understand the relationship between the 10% surcharge or the charge on the fees versus what it's actually going to cost to hire these 3 FTEs. We've had some really rich years, multi-million-dollar years in terms of revenues coming in, presumably in a year in which there is $750,000, for example, being allocated to planners. The 3 FTEs who we have are not going to cost us anywhere near that much. How are we proposing to handle the difference between what's coming in with that 10% versus what they actually cost? Because one of the advantages, and I do hear the disadvantages that you're speaking to of having temporary contract staff, it can expand and contract according to the activity that's taking place in our parks portfolio. I think we're creating a bit of a disconnect here between what's actually coming in versus a fixed cost year after year.
Through the chair, similar concerns were raised in 2012, and over the last 2 years, I think it's borne out that even though we have in some years collected a bit more than we've spent, that's mostly because of difficulty filling the positions on a temporary basis. But we had agreed that we would look at the amount of dollars that are being collected through this program, and if it became excessive, if we were collecting more than we actually needed, then we would adjust that to do that, because we don't want to create a surplus needlessly, and that's not our intent. The 10% was an estimation that, as we look at the projects that came in and what we potentially would have paid had we found staff and been able to retain them, it would have been just about right. But I think the intent would be essentially to continue to monitor that, and then if we hit a point where we said, really for the foreseeable little bit, we really don't need to take the 10%, then we simply wouldn't.
Okay.
And that's been the approach.
I think it'd be interesting to see that analysis in terms of real dollars between what discrepancy there is, if any, between 10% versus what we actually need. So, thank you.
Councillor Schwelling?
Yeah, all right. Yes. So back a couple of years ago, staff just mentioned it, we did go through the one change council tried to make to a budget was to add one park planner. I don't know if you remember that debate. We debated for close to 3 hours at budget time about the horrific impact on a budget where we have 17,000 employees of adding one park planner. And through that process, we ended up saying no. So I don't think we want to rely on that process to achieve the outcome we're looking for here, because the outcome we're looking for here is actually to get things moving in the department. And I think staff have laid out a very persuasive case today as to why we need to go ahead with this one now. I also like Mr. Chenier's sense of humor, where he said that they do their best not to create surpluses, and they've certainly proven able to do that. So let's stick with the need we have in front of us today. Let's address that need today, because it's a need of today. And we can still examine how we fund it later at budget time if we want to make the change. But today, I think they've made a strong case.
For example, if the 10% isn't doing the funding, isn't sufficient to do the funding, we want to hear that information as well. Councillor Chernushenko, last speaker to this motion, please.
Thank you very much. And yes, we do have to go back a couple of years and remind ourselves where this came from. I was actually the one who, after 2 years in office, had frankly been embarrassed too many times. I was not engaging in hyperbole, where I brought to our attention that I could not get new garbage cans installed in Brewer Park. I could not get new benches. Why not? Because we did not have the parks planning staff to go through the projects. Things as simple as that. I could not spend the money that I had because we did not have the staff. I tried to get permanent staff added, and as Councillor Shirley reminds us, Council balked at that. And so the workaround of the 10% was a way of dealing with this. We were not particularly happy with that, because that was 10% less to actually go towards the projects, but realizing that this was a compromise to be made in order to get the staffing, that was supported, and we found ourselves in this situation. However, in 2015, I am almost as embarrassed, because it is almost as hard to get projects rolled through, because we have had trouble hiring and retaining staff. Why? Because they're temporary. So we have heard from our top managers that, based now on close to 3 years' experience with this 10% approach, that we are not being successful in hiring and retaining the staff we need. So that is a problem that we have now. I don't see it changing. We have to deal with it now, or else I will have to continue to tell all the residents of my community, and many of you will, sorry, I've got the money, you've got the need, but we can't process the projects that we've identified because we're not able to retain staff. The proposal is that we make these staff permanent so that we attract good people and we keep good people, and they get better and more efficient, and we get to work with them and they get to know our communities. I think that is why we need to continue to support this program and not a motion to defer. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hubley for a wrap-up on his motion.
Just a quick point, I'm hearing councillors concerned about using CIL funds for life cycle purposes, but I'm getting the sense that we're willing to start using CIL funds to staff, which instead of using the normal budget process, we want to start using our CIL funds to hire staff.
We have been using them. That's why
we have been using them on a temporary basis.
That's right. That's how they've been
what's
funding.
in this report is to turn them into permanent positions. So therefore, you'd be using CIL funds to create permanent positions. I really doubt it's going to stop at the 3. From what you're saying, you'd like to have a lot more staff. That's what you want to use your CIL on in your area. That's great, but I don't want my CIL funds going towards staff. I want to go to my community and say that this cash that was raised because certain communities did not take park space or park space wasn't available, went to improving green space, not hiring full-time staff that may not be needed in 2 years' time.
And Mr. Mizzi was just talking to me about the fact that when that analysis is done, and we are going to have reporting, if this is passed on, do we already pass the quarterly? Yes, on deferral. It's in the report, the quarterly reporting, we will identify that. And he said that 3 staff people, if it works out that they're not needed, as there's attrition and that sort of thing. And remember, those of us on the planning committee, which are the majority of the people at the table, how aggressive our work plan is in this term as well. So, but thank you for that. On the motion, where is it? So this is the motion that says that whereas changes have been approved in the park planning process, it will move staff from project manager role from concept to delivery to a new advisory function of identifying minimum requirements for a park and then coming back. Whereas the benefits of these changes are still being confirmed, and it would be premature to make permanent the 3 positions, therefore be it resolved that the clause, issue 6, adding 3 permanent positions be deleted. So on that, we're going to take yeas and nays again. Everybody on board with what what it's asking? Okay, Councillor Blade, this is on the Hubley motion.
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Chiarelli?
No.
Councillor Cloutier?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
No.
Councillor Kadri?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tierney?
No.
And myself, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's 5-4 in support to 4 against. So that motion wins. Does this motion go to, do these motions all go to council, Mr. Mark?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So we have another one, and it's from Councillor Hubley, that the clause on front-ending of life cycle projects be amended to apply only to projects the treasurer confirms are forecasted to be funded in that budget year. Councillor Hubley?
If I could just ask for clarification on this, because something I heard just before wrap-up from staff, I think Mr. Curry mentioned that currently the report is not recommending that we do the front ending. If that's the case, we don't need this motion, unless somebody around here wants to create a front-ending model, which I'm not really interested in.
Can you repeat that again, please?
Withdraw that. I thought I heard Mr. Curry say just before wrap-up that currently there is nothing in this report that would create the front-ending mechanism. I know I was one. I think I heard some other councillors talk to that we thought that the report was recommending creating a front-ending model where you would use CIL to front-end projects as far out as 2018.
Just to clarify, Chair, the report still does recommend that you can front-end, but that the ward councillor balance is not paid back. Not paid back. There was discussion in July whether the ward balance should be repaid back. The report is still unamended.
Then, Madam Chair, I withdraw the motion because I'm okay with that recommendation.
Okay. So we're withdrawing that one. My last one is from Councillor Tierney. I think it's a really clarification, Be it resolved that the clause, any capital project associated... associated with land that is not a public park be replaced with the following: any capital project associated with land that is not either one of a public park or being used for recreational purposes. Okay, clear? Is that carried, or do we need yeas and nays?
Book reading is recreational, I assume, right?
Clarification from Councillor Blais.
So if a private enterprise has a soccer field or outdoor recreational facility, it doesn't say it has to be a city-owned piece of land that's being used for recreation. It just says land that's being used for recreation. So are we going to get into, let's put city money into the RA Center or something like that?
Sensplex?
So, exactly.
So,
Madam Chair, there's another clause that says it has to be city-owned. There is another clause that says it has to be city-owned.
okay, so is this motion carried? Carried? Thank you. I think that's it. Ms. Duvernay?
You've got a direction to staff?
Oh, yes, we have a direction. There's a direction to staff that Councillor Leeper. Hello? I know it's been a fun time. We've got people that have been waiting for the next two items, and 12:30 is approaching. If there's a miracle that we can get it in by 12:30, and I think it's possible, we won't be taking a lunch. We'll just do it. But I may have to come back and ask you to waive the rules, okay? So on this item, there is direction to staff from Councillor Leeper that staff introduce a pilot program for the wards of Rideau Vanier, Capital, Somerset, and Kitchissippi to address the shortage of cash in lieu funding and prioritize park improvements accordingly. Now, I think that that's going to have to be voted on, honestly, because otherwise every person around the table is going to talk. Don't forget, all of you get large amounts of Section 37, which none of us get, right? So, I mean, there's like two sides to this. So it's a direction, but and usually you don't have to support, we don't have to vote on it, but I just can tell the sands are shifting, right? Doesn't matter. Normally, but again, normally we don't vote on a direction, correct, Mr. Mark?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
So if you wanted to keep that as a direction, I would suggest, because it's just being thrown out today. Sorry, Councillor Blais, do you have a suggestion?
Well, so I have some questions because I don't know what a pilot project would mean, but I think there has to be some unanimity around a direction as well, right? That's the whole point of it. It can't just be, well, I'm going to direct them to not raise taxes next year. It can't just be me by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that what I would suggest that we do is we park this for today and just have a direction to staff that we receive a memo from the department with comments on how that could work. Would that be okay? All right. Good. Okay, so on the report as amended, do you want yeas and nays, or are we just going to carry it? Yeas and nays? Hang on until I find my pad. Here we go. On the report as amended. Okay, Councillor Blais?
Yes.
Brockington?
In favor.
Councillor Chiarelli?
No.
Councillor Cloutier?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
Yes, with big smiles.
I thought you were going to change your mind. Councillor Leeper?
No.
Councillor Kadri?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tierney?
No.
And myself, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 3 in favor of the item as amended. I have, thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for hanging in here. I'm sure that you're all constituents somewhere that will benefit from this discussion. One thing that I have to do is ask Councillor Tierney. If you remember, we deferred item number 9, which was the front-ending agreement for the 10th line pumping station sanitary overflow, and we said September the 8th would be, it could come back. The applicant or the front-ending company, Mattamy, has asked that that be September 22nd. So I need the rules waived that we can discuss this, moved by Councillor Blais, and then Councillor Tierney, are you willing to move that? So it'll come back to us on September 22nd. Is that carried? Carried, thank you. Okay, so now we're off and running to item number 10, and Ms. Collins is going to be coming up. And does anyone want we had a presentation at Built Heritage. Does anyone want a presentation on this, or would you like to have pictures up on the screen? Would that suffice? Pictures. And we do have registered speakers. So we'll go to the speakers first, I think. Okay? All right. So I have two speakers. I have, and this is the application to alter the City Works Building, 7 Bayview Road, a property recently protected under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And I just wanted to say as well on that last report before, while you're getting ready, Ms. Collins, is that, you know, we need to understand that, and because of all the conversation, I think that everyone will know that the report is progress, because it makes the handling of those funds a lot clearer and more transparent for the public, therefore, especially with that quarterly reporting. So, plus further discussion ahead is possible this fall at the Community Forum, which is on November 7th, Saturday, November 7th. Okay, you ready?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if the committee would like a brief intro to the windows situation?
Yes.
Okay. So just everybody on the committee should have received a memo from Mr. Mizzi regarding the windows at the 7 Bayview site. There was a direction from the Built Heritage Subcommittee for staff to reevaluate the proposed windows, proposed replacement windows for this project with the proponent. So we did that, and I can show you a couple of options that we have looked at. These are the existing windows. Most of the windows in the building are proposed for replacement with new aluminum windows that have a compatible pattern to the existing window, but not exactly the same. So this was the direction to staff, directed to work with the project team to explore improvements to the windows. So last week we met with the applicant and looked at two options. So replacing the windows on the front elevation with new windows that replicate the historic window pattern, or replacing all the windows that were proposed for replacement with new windows that replicate the historic window pane pattern. So this was option one. So you can see this, sorry, I've got to get the right mouse here. This shows the replaced windows here and over here with windows that match what is there already. And then on the side elevations, you would have something that is different than the historic pattern. And then this is option two, which shows the windows being replaced all across the building with windows that match the existing historic windows. Staff and the proponent both agreed that this option, if there was to be another option, this option is the better one. The building is not a building that is seen only from the front because of the way it's angled on the site. And so having two different types of windows was seen as not very unified for the design of the building. This option would cost an additional approximately $100,000 on the cost of the windows overall. The current cost for the proposed replacement windows is approximately $405,000, so it would be about a 25% increase in the overall cost. So that's up to the committee to consider. That was the direction we received from Built Heritage Subcommittee to bring this forward to committee and council in advance of their consideration of the report, based on feedback from both the both Councillor Leeper and the Community Association and the Heritage Community on this item.
Or I'll have the people come up. Why don't I have the delegations come forward first, okay, and hold questions? Does that sound fair? Okay. So first up, I'd like to invite Ian Fraser, Director of the Innovation Center at Bayview Yards, Nancy Malash, and Carola Blodorn. Carola. Was I right the first? Is it Carola or Carola? Both? Followed by David Jeans.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nancy Malash, and I have Ian Fraser here with me, who is also on the board of directors for the Innovation Center. I think we're primarily here to answer questions, but we're certainly here in support of the staff recommendation. Okay. And as I say, if there's any questions, Ian, I don't know if you have comments.
Great.
Yeah.
And I just will say, too, while the rest of them are chatting there, if anybody wants to ask questions of the applicant, please let me know. But I was speaking with the mayor yesterday, and he was talking about how he looks at this opportunity for the city as one that we have with the horticulture building and the net benefit for the city with that investment that we made. And if you remember, we've just recently, when did we designate this? It was
in April.
Yeah, so just this year that we designated it because it's important. It's sort of like the same situation, and look at how amazing that the investment in the Horticulture Center has been. So my question is, since nobody has said that they have a question, how does the timing affect you? If, for example, we were able to find $100,000 somewhere, or if there was the willingness of the committee to find that, how does that affect your timing?
I might ask Ms. Lima just to comment on that, who is our owner's representative, but the building has to be delivered by fall of 2016 in order for Invest Ottawa to move from their current location on Aberdeen off Preston Street over to the new building. So it's on the project renovation refit. It's on a very tight timeline. But I might just ask Carola if you have any comments.
Yes, thank you. So we've discussed that with the architects this morning, the design build team, and if we were to request the change at this point, it wouldn't have a substantial impact on the schedule because we are still, we're between 50% complete design documents and 95% review set. So hopefully that wouldn't have a major impact on the schedule at this point.
Well, that's important, but I guess as important, I did contact Mr. Bashir, and we have the information from Ms. Collins as well, that there isn't a funding source for the $100,000. Are you all in agreement of that? There isn't some extra cash
yes,
money?
Right. That's our understanding.
Okay, so Councillor Blais has a question?
To what level is the design already?
What do you mean by that?
Are we at a class, like how far along in the design are we?
So just to give a quick review, the project was tendered as a design build tender. So we had basically a conceptual design that was provided by the design builder. They have a fixed contract price for that design. So any changes that we would make at this point would be considered a change order to their contract. And they are, I would say, Sandy, how many from 95%? Yeah, 85% on the contract documents. So very close to having tender documents ready for construction.
Sure. So the chances of finding the money savings internal to the project, I think at this point, are probably pretty low. Typically, you run into things that add costs as you're building, not things that save money. So I'd be hesitant to, it would be nice maybe if you could have these upgraded windows, but if we want to keep to a fixed budget envelope, I'm not sure that that's really possible.
Thank you. Good question. Councillor Leeper, questions? Councillor Brockington as well? This is to the delegation. Okay. Thank you very much for coming forward. And I'll ask Mr. David Jeans to come forward. And then, councillors, if you have any questions of staff after the delegation, after you've asked Mr. Jeans questions, if you have. Mr. Jeans is it president of Heritage Ottawa? Is that the title or chair?
President and chair of the board, so you can be either, but for my sins.
Welcome.
Thank you. So Heritage Ottawa had already submitted a presentation, which I've just forwarded to the members of the committee, which we presented at Built Heritage Subcommittee. There was a very vigorous discussion at that committee, which was in line with the concerns that we had raised, particularly in paragraphs 3 and 4 of our submission. But I want to say, first of all, that we were strongly supportive of this adaptive reuse and of the city leading the way in adapting such a decaying building of significant heritage value in a prominent location to a new use, and certainly showing the way and setting a standard for the private sector to follow. So we had the concern about the windows, and I think that option 2 is that you're looking at here is a great improvement over the very small number of windows that we're actually going to have a heritage sensitive restoration before. We were supportive of the main entrance to the building, which is also a major intervention, but was really justified as an essential part of the adaptive reuse. And in fact, the whole design in this picture, you can also see that there's a connecting passageway added up on the roof, which we also think is a sensitive part of the design. So we're happy with the design. But we also mentioned in our submission that the city itself, previously with the designation of the Briarcliff Heritage Conservation District, stressed how important window treatments are in respecting heritage buildings. And so we had the concern that this would really be sending the wrong signal to the private sector if the city didn't meet its own standards on this important development. So I think that's all I have to say, and I hope that you can go with option 2.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. Any comments on Mr. Jeans' comments, Ms. Collins?
No, I don't think so. I think the fact that the replacement windows are different is acknowledged in the report as potentially having a negative impact on the heritage value of the building, but the proposed windows that are recommended for approval in the report are deemed to be compatible as well. So windows are something we can always consider with great detail, not usually discussed as publicly as this.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Jeans? Thank you, Mr. Jeans. Okay, that is it for the speakers for the delegation. So, questions, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are staff revising the recommendation, or is the original recommendation what we have proposed?
Mr. Mizzi?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, the recommendation in our report still stands.
Can I have a better understanding of what benefits there would be if we proceeded with the replacement windows, other than the look to them? What additional benefits, if any, are there by proceeding with the replacement windows over the original windows? Original not meaning original to the building, but original to the renovated plan.
The windows in this building were identified as one of its heritage attributes at the time of designation, so they are considered to be a significant feature of the building. The proposed replacement windows that the department is recommending approval of through the report are not an exact replica, which doesn't meet entirely the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. So replacing them with a replica would more closely meet those standards which have been adopted by Council and would unify the look of the building. So it's a design benefit only.
So what I'm struggling with is whether or not we wish to, are we in debate now or just questions?
You can do
Okay.
both. You can even wrap up if you want.
Well, I would like to hear from others if others wish to speak. But what I'm trying to wrestle with is, by respecting the heritage value of the building, the look and feel of that building, and I applaud the fact that the Innovation Center is moving into this center because it, in essence, will retain and restore a building that certainly needs significant TLC. About whether the additional funds to get a window that is more like the original is a wise investment of taxpayer dollars. And I believe there are significant buildings in this city that need to be retained and restored for their heritage value. And I'm not sure whether or not it's quote-unquote good enough to retain the building without the value added of a window, and whether we can live with the original plan as presented and not spend the extra. So that's what I'm wrestling with, because I applaud what's being done with the building, and I'm not sure whether or not I want to go that extra bit to get a window that looks more like the original. So at the moment, I'm not swayed to invest the extra money because I believe the windows that will be going in will suit the purpose. They will be 2015 type modern day windows. But I'm open to hearing from others.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you. Just quickly in response to Councillor Brockington's remarks, we are talking about heritage. It's not a taxpayer value question. The question is whether or not we need to invest those funds in order to maintain the building as a heritage building within the parameters of the Heritage Act. And taxpayer value is not something that I'm considering on this particular project, despite the fact that really what we're talking about is 1%, I think, of the overall project envelope, somewhere around there in terms of the provincial contribution. That said, the Act does allow for alterations to heritage buildings where there is a question of it being practical. I think there is a question of what can we practically do here. Our heritage staff have done some great work in terms of bringing us a couple of options to look at. Given the tightness in the project budget here, as at Built Heritage Subcommittee when I participated in it, I'm not asking my colleagues to direct or to otherwise force our heritage folks in Invest Ottawa to find those savings internally. I'm disappointed it couldn't be found. It would have been nice to have a larger envelope to do this building, but it's not. So I'm going to be voting with the staff recommendation this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else care to speak on this item? So on the staff recommendation, is that carried? Thank you very much, everybody. And we have a motion now from Vice Chair Tierney.
This is actually just to bring this directly to council because of the urgency of the construction and the timeline, the critical timelines that have to be met. Tomorrow. 26th of August, 2015.
Just, sorry, I have my mic up. This item on Bayview will be, the motion is that it go to council tomorrow, August 26th.
Question, may I just ask why? It's not a step to be undertaken lightly, obviously.
A building permit for this project cannot be issued until a heritage permit has been issued. And so due to the construction timing, they're looking to get a building permit the first couple of weeks of September, so we need to get the heritage permit in so that it can all start going through the system.
How long will that take?
The building permit process? I think it's
going through the system.
It's a pretty big permit, so I think it's already in, and some of the structural work, some of the structural non-heritage elements of the project are already going through the plans examination stage. But I think they're aiming for mid-September.
Thanks.
Would you like yeas and nays? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, and our last item is the designation of Champlain Oil Gas Station at 70 Richmond Road under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And Ms. Collins, you're going to put just a slide up, right? Just a picture.
Whatever you like.
Anybody want a presentation on this, or just the picture sufficient? Picture sufficient. There it is. Okay, with committee's indulgence, I suggest that we have 4 speakers. And I suggest that we go to the speakers first, the delegations, have them come forward. First up is Duff Mitchell and Paul Forster, board members of the Island Park Drive Community Association. Are you still here, gentlemen? Thank you. We haven't had a lot of delegations today, but I think that you've been here before and you know that the drill is 5 minutes for a presentation. Thank you. We've had quite a bit of written communication on this as well. No.
Good day. We very much appreciate the opportunity to discuss this matter. My name is Duff Mitchell, Island Park Drive Community Association. I'm accompanied by Paul Forster, also of the Community Association. What we want to do is very succinctly explain to you our position on the heritage designation of 70 Richmond Road and how we have come to that position. First of all, our position. The Community Association strongly supports the recommendation by Built Heritage Subcommittee to designate 70 Richmond Road as a site of significant cultural heritage value and interest under Part 4 of Ontario Heritage Act. We had submitted a letter to that effect for the August 13th subcommittee meeting. Our association, Island Park Drive Community Association, as I'm sure most will know, represents Island Park Drive, which is approximately 3 kilometers, consists of some 200 households, 6 or so embassies, a variety of ambassadorial residents. It was created as a scenic parkway in 1910, and it is governed actually by covenants held by the National Capital Commission. Covenants refer to the character, look, etc. of the street. The board of directors, the board of the Island Park Drive Community Association consists of 9 members. We have sought to have members represent each of the 3 major sections of the street, north, middle, and south. The board was elected at the AGM meeting on May 28th. And our main focus as a community association is on enhancing the street's historical character and quality of life. Our process in coming to this decision. For this meeting, we had the opportunity to spend a few hours with a representative of Main & Main at our board meeting on the evening of August 13th, following the Built Heritage Subcommittee meeting. At that meeting, we had a very frank and open discussion on the issue, and following that meeting, the board had further discussion and which resulted in a unanimous position of support for heritage for this site. Previous to this, we had our due diligence included participating in the developers' public meetings that were held in 2014. But at that time, heritage was not on the table as a factor to be considered at the site. In 2015, heritage did appear, and the public in our community was made aware of it through a Kitchissippi Ward meeting in April and through our annual meeting in May. We have also had outreach on this issue through our consultation with our residents and through our website and the local papers. Our reasoning rests on 3 positions: that yes, the building has cultural heritage value, that retaining that cultural heritage value is consistent with the planning objectives of the Richmond Road and Wellington Street secondary plan, and that adaptive reuse of heritage gas stations is good economics. Since I only have a couple of minutes, and I'm lost track, I have a minute and a half. I'll just be quick. For cultural heritage value, we support, as I said earlier, the Built Heritage Subcommittee's motion regarding that. With respect to planning objectives, we understand that 70 Richmond Road is a site of, as a site of cultural heritage value, is entirely consistent with the planning objectives of that secondary plan. And as for our adaptive reuse of heritage gas stations, as the city staff indicated, there are many examples in Canada and the United States where such heritage gas stations have been converted into very prosperous businesses. Just 2 blocks or so from where we are here now, there's a former Shell gas station, which is now the bacon factory. Well, it's not a heritage gas station, it is a thriving restaurant as a result of adaptive reuse. So in conclusion, our intent in supporting Built Heritage Subcommittee's recommendation is not to block development of this site, but rather to support the development of Main and Main's efforts while at the same time preserving the site's cultural heritage value for the community and for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions? Councillor Liepert?
Thank you. I will keep it really brief. First, I wasn't aware of a restaurant called the Bacon Factory. That's important news to me. But more importantly, I just want to make sure, I mean, one of the things that I've heard over and over again walking around the streets, on email and social media, is that there's widespread support for designating this heritage. You mentioned that you've done a fair bit of outreach. I mean, are we talking about just a few people who support this, or do the residents of Island Park, is it a significant amount of support there?
If I may, we believe that that this issue has been put in the public very extensively. Most recently, Kitchissippi Times features a half-page article on the matter, and in the same issue, we have a full-page article on our community association with coordinates for anybody interested on how to contact us. We are only aware of one resident who is opposed to the heritage designation. Everyone else has indicated either support or they're neutral on the issue. Most importantly, this was raised, as I said, at our annual general meeting. It's been profiled in our website. It's in the local papers. It's been in the Ottawa Citizen, as everyone here knows. It's a very public issue that has, to our knowledge as an association, has only resulted in one voice of opposition, which we fully respect, by the way, and which we have kept informed as to all the dates for committees such as this, the contact people, and we have shared with them our positions in advance of such meetings so that they are on a equal playing field.
Thanks. And I would encourage members of the committee to read the report. There's some excellent additional history that the Community Association has dug up with respect to some local connections and how the early gasoline industry in Ottawa has evolved that this building is representative of. Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. I'd invite Carl Fernie from FOTAN to come forward, please. And then David Jeans, and then Andrew King. Mr. Fernie, you're speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair.
You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of committee. My name is Carl Fernie. I'm a senior planner at FOTAN Consultants here in Ottawa. I'm here today on behalf of Main and Main Developments, the owners of 70 Richmond Road. They cannot be here today, so I'll be speaking on their behalf. We have provided written submission outlining our reasons for not supporting the recommendation at this time, and I'd like to briefly discuss some of those points at this time. In general, we feel the designation is premature at this time based on some key considerations on this site, including existing conditions as well as the planning context on the site. The decision was made without the benefit of some key technical pieces of information out here, one of which is a structural assessment of the existing gas station building as it is. That has not been completed to date. That leads into knowing the components of the building, knowing if it can be converted to any other type of use, if it can be moved itself. The second is any kind of environmental assessment on the site dealing with the fact that the site may be dirty, may need cleanup, and may need remediation. Without these studies, it is very hard to look at any kind of adaptive reuse as was mentioned for this site. It is only a 900 square foot building, or potentially, as was noted, moving the building around on site. Without these studies, it is very hard. We feel that it's premature at this point to designate. The second consideration is a larger one. It's the greater planning context with this site. This is a corner site at Island Park and Richmond Road. It's designated traditional Main Street in the City of Ottawa official plan. Policies of the traditional Main Street promote medium-density, mixed-use development, close to the street, active uses. The policies also prohibit automotive uses, parking in front of buildings, and other items, additional items such as that. So in keeping the building where it is on the site, we do not feel like we would be meeting the intent of those policies. Additionally, in the Richmond Road Westboro CDP and the secondary plan, this site is identified as a prominent opportunity redevelopment site, specifically for a 4-story mixed-use building. These plans also provide policy direction moving away from car dealerships, automotive uses, and towards more active street frontages, buildings closer to the street. I'll also note that this site is not specifically noted as having any heritage value in those plans, which is something that Main and Main, when they first purchased the site, did not have as a consideration. In summary, we ask that the recommendation designate not be supported at this juncture in order for Main and Main to move forward with development visions with the city, in conjunction with the city on this site. We do acknowledge that this may include specific requirements for additional studies as outlined by the city based upon city heritage staff's recommendations, and we are okay with those requirements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask, does anyone have any questions of Mr. Fernie? Okay. Thank you for coming out. I have some questions from arising from your comments to Ms. Collins. Thank you. And they are, when you are doing a typical, or every time you are looking at designating a building under Part 4, Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, do you typically do a technical assessment ever, at all, to see the wellness, if you will, of a building?
Madam Chair, no, we don't. Cultural heritage value is not contingent on condition of a building, so no.
Right, and I didn't think so. If I think about Our Lady that you looked at and the condition that it was in, the Stittsville Main Street fire and the condition that it was in, it's not part of what you consider under the cultural. And so, and same would be said with the environmental impact on the fact that it used to be a gas station or that sort of thing. And then I'd just like you to speak to, and liken this a little bit to Broadview School. And we took a lot of people were concerned about that designation. But really, if you look at how you designate that, the reason that in every single stage of questioning, it ranked very high. What would you say about the you're questioning the whether this should be designated or not in the categories that apply under the cultural impact?
Do you mean the criteria under the Ontario Heritage Act? Yes, okay. So there, as you likely are all familiar, there are 3 criteria for designating a property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The first is historical or associative value. The second is contextual value, and the third is architecture or design. So under the first category of historical or associative value, the building is significant as an early example of a gas station in Ottawa. The first gas station in North America was constructed in 1913 in Pennsylvania. And in Ottawa, in the 1920s, there were approximately 35 gas stations. And by the time this building was built in 1934, there were over 150. So it's representative of that trend of the growth of the private automobile in Ottawa, which, as we discussed at length at Built Heritage Subcommittee, is kind of ironic given our planning framework now, but it's representative of that trend. From a contextual perspective, it's located along Richmond Road, and while we've made it clear that there is a possibility to move this building, it has been identified that its location on Richmond Road is significant because Richmond Road was originally the highway in and out of the city and would have been the location of many gas stations and service centers. In fact, this corner at one point in time had gas stations on all four corners. So it's a very key location along Richmond Road. And then from a design and physical value perspective, it is representative of a certain type of building. Gas stations from this period were often built to evoke another building type. So in this instance, we're looking at something that looks a little bit like an English cottage with its steeply pitched roof, stucco cladding, and sort of a very residential feel that is meant to fit in with the neighborhood that it's located in. So those are the three criteria that we use to evaluate, and that's where it came out, that it meets all three.
Thank you. And just finally, the applicant is not in any way inhibited from moving it within the corner, the location it has on the lot.
We didn't identify its location on the lot as a heritage attribute in this designation. However, if the building were designated, the applicant would go through a process to alter the building if they wanted to move it.
Okay, thank you for all that. Okay, we're 5 minutes left before 12:30, so I would presume that committee is going to want to finish this. We have 2 more speakers, right? Okay, good. Mr. Jeans, and followed by Mr. King. You have a question? Councillor Blais. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Heritage Ottawa also submitted support for this designation to the Built Heritage Subcommittee, and you have that before you. I just wanted to add a couple of things personally. I live in the west half of Kitchissippi and I'm very familiar with this site, and I have been personally closely involved in the last 3 heritage designations in the west half of Kitchissippi. I just wanted to point out that the location of this building not only relates to Richmond Road, it also relates to Island Park Drive, and therefore the heritage of the parkway system in Ottawa, which the previous delegation pointed out. This driveway, Island Park Drive, was developed in 1910, and so it was still relatively new in the early 1930s when this building was constructed, and it actually is part of the streetscape of Island Park Drive, as well as the streetscape of Richmond Road. In fact, there was a major traffic circle at that point originally where Island Park crossed Richmond. Another point about it, which you can see from this picture, one might think about the appropriateness of this site as a gateway to the developing Westboro to the west of it. But the multi-story building, which you see in the back of this picture, which is on the Visitation Monastery site, 114 Richmond Road, another heritage designated building, was actually referred to by the planning department. The reason for having a 9 or 10-story building at that location was that was viewed as the gateway to Westboro, not the Island Park Drive intersection. And so I think that it's significant in this location, and I think that you've heard since designation really doesn't preclude future alterations or relocations should you approve them. What you are really approving now is, does this building have heritage value? And we believe strongly that it does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Jeans? No, thank you. Mr. King? Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors. Why should we try and preserve this old gas station? As Leslie brings it up. Spinning wheel. Gas station. Yeah. And thank you. We went through a lot of the details about the gas station last time. I won't go over them again, but this is the gas station in question. And you might ask, why would we save this little gas station? Well, I won't go through the history. We've already heard that. The nature of our neighborhood is slipping away in Westboro, and unless we preserve these little pieces of history, we'll lose an important connection to our past for future generations. It's a small building, but many may not know why it's an important part of our history. So what can we do to possibly save this? Well, we can look at other examples, such as in Toronto. They had a very similar gas station, which they picked up, moved, and restored. In the United States, this style of service station has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and they have been converted into restaurants like this one in Saratoga Springs. Our friends at CNN even recognized the importance of these gas stations, and they did a whole bit about how they're converted into trendy restaurants. Now, in this image here, you can see the gas station, and as the developer's representative pointed out, it's a quite small building with a large piece of property in front of it, which may hinder possible development. I see this as an opportunity to use imaginative development, such as maybe keeping it where it is and dropping a building over top with a skylight enclosure, maintaining the historic nature of the building inside another building that replicates the architectural style of the gas station with a residential feel, like we talked about earlier, steeply pitched roof, and the stucco arched design aesthetic to it. The developer also talked about it being a hindrance in terms of developing a viable kind of building with tenants that would provide profits. We could adapt the area to use the same architectural style with the building enclosed, such as this version in California. We can also talk about moving the structure, and that would open up the back part of the area where we can put in whatever you want in behind it, maintaining that gateway feel and the design aesthetic that is very important to our neighborhood. I just want to thank you, and I believe this is a unique and visionary approach to the Island Park Station could preserve its history while addressing the demands of a modern neighborhood. It is becoming a growing trend elsewhere to convert these old gas stations into different uses, and due to their high visibility and desirable corner locations in established neighborhoods. A transformation could happen with the proper vision and expertise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And any questions? Thank you very much for coming out today.
Thanks for having me.
Does anyone have any comments to make about the designation of the Champlain Oil Gas Station, 70 Richmond Road, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act? Is the item carried? Somebody's got to answer and say, yeah, carried. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any notices of motion? There is a notice of motion? Councillor Leeper, you're going for a notice of motion? Okay.
Thanks.
There might be a notice of motion. While we're waiting for that, no? No notices of motion. Any inquiries? How about some other business? Okay, are we adjourned? Until the next meeting, which is Tuesday, September 8th, 2015. Thanks, everybody.